5:36, I will call the select board meeting for July 8th, 2024 to order. If you could join me by standing for the pledge of allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So Mr. Sexton will not be joining us tonight. So just wanted to let you know as well. We do have a public hearing that was scheduled for 5:31. We are a little late due to some technical difficulties, but we're up and running now. So I will open the public hearing. This is to grant permission to Massachusetts Electric Company doing business as National Grid. They are requesting permission to locate poles, wires, and fixtures, including the necessary sustaining and protecting fixtures along and across the following public way: Morgan Street, National Grid to install 3 SO poles on Morgan Street, beginning at a point approximately 1,389 feet south of the center line at the intersection of New Ludlow Road and continuing approximately 227 feet in a southerly direction. National Grid proposes to install 3 solely owned poles on Morgan Street to provide service to a new home in Granby, Mass. Location approximately is shown on the plan that is attached. Wherefore it prays that after due notice and hearing as provided by law, it be granted a location for and permission to erect and maintain poles and wires, together with such shading and protecting fixtures as it may find necessary. Said poles to be erected substantially in accordance with the plan filed here within, marked Morgan Street, Granby, Mass. Number 309-67113. Also for permission to lay and maintain underground laterals, cables, and wires in the above or intersecting public ways for the purpose of making connections with such poles and buildings as each of said petitioners may desire for distributing purposes. Your petitioner agrees to reserve space for 1 cross arm at a suitable point on each of said poles for the fire, police, telephone, and telegraph signal wires belonging to the municipality and used by exclusively for municipal purposes. So National Grid is not here. Do I have anyone here with questions for the Morgan Street poles? Do not. So I will close the, no,
Any opponents? You just asked if there are proponents. Now you're going to ask, are there opponents?
are there opponents? Oh. All right, so I will close the public hearing part of this. And I will open up to the rest of the board. Any questions?
No questions. It's a new building lot. I think they have all the information here.
Yeah.
It's 3 poles, as I understand it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I have no further questions.
All right, so I will entertain a motion to approve the 3 SO poles.
I make a motion to approve National Grid to install 3 SO poles on Morgan Street.
Second that motion. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so actually, hold on, I did this last time too, we didn't sign it. Let's- All right. So Chris, our next appointment's at 5:45. It's 5:41. Do we have citizen participation? Do you have anything for us, Chris?
Yep, hold on. I have two Dufresne rentals. The first one is for July 13th, 2024, arriving 11 a.m., departing 4:30 p.m. Maximum number of people is 25. It is a graduation party. And the area being requested is small pavilion number 3, Kendall Street side near the bridge. The second one is for June 29th, 2024, arriving 11 a.m., departing 5 p.m. Maximum number of people is 50. It's a graduation birthday party. It is for the large pavilion, gazebo, and the large field.
And I know the only correspondence we had this week was from Comcast, so that's no another panel discontinued.
There was a letter, I believe, from Miss Bruffy
Yes.
in there also. So just
Okay.
recognizing that you did receive it.
Yep.
So, okay.
Thank you. And just so Dave also knows, Comcast, we are in negotiations with our contract with them, with Attorney Augustus.
August.
Did it August? And that was 18-month process, right? So still, do you know how much time is left on that?
We are in the 8th month of it.
We still have some time.
And actually, a draft contract has already been sent to Comcast with supporting documentation, and we're waiting to hear back from them.
It's only 1 minute early, if it's okay. Do you have anything else for us?
I can do something real quick.
Okay.
Old business, regarding Forge Pond.
Yes.
We did receive a 1-year extension to complete the work. So now all work has to be done by June 30th of 2025.
June, I know the last time we had talked about it, Dave Leonard was adamant that he was going to be able to get it done for June 30th.
He ran into some health issues.
Okay.
So, and he should be up and running and going fairly quickly.
Now, could he file it sooner than that? And then we can.
We have until then.
Okay. So when he's able to, he can file and we can go for the second part of it,
Yes.
which would be the construction phase.
Yes, yes.
All right, and that brings us to 5:45. So our next appointment is Tim Colley from District 2 Water. Good, if you can come up here, I think, we can get you on mic as well.
Chair of our water board also.
Thank you very much for coming in. I know this has been something that we've talked about for a while now on the board.
Sure.
So I know Ms. Leonard sent you
A bunch of stuff, yeah.
Bunch of stuff, yeah.
Yeah. I think with us, I don't want to say we'd be almost starting over, you know what I mean? But engineering wise and everything, it would be, you'd pretty much be starting over because it's a completely separate location where we would be coming. Our water right now is on Morgan Street, right at the town line. We brought a 10-inch water main up there 3 years ago, right to the town line. And so that's where we would be taking it off on Morgan, right at Morgan and Pleasant, where we have water right to there right now. Yeah. No, not yet. I was gonna.
That, I was gonna say that's not.
This is-
Kathy gave,
No, these are maps that I did.
right? Thank you.
And
Save one for Glenn and.
I have more too, if you need more. It just shows different elevations based around the area that we're talking about. Obviously this can be changed, skewed, moved any way you guys want. But if you look at the elevation page, there's the type page I gave you.
Yeah.
I just drove around and I just took a bunch of different elevations, pretty much West Street, this whole area that we're talking about, Cold Hill area. Definitely can't feed Cold Hill, elevation wise. We're, I don't know if you guys understand how a water system works with elevation. We use pressure. We use the head of water pressure to create our pressure at the base of our tank for us. So for every 2.31 feet of elevation, it gives you 1 pound of water pressure. So the height on the top of Coal Hill is actually higher than the top of our tank. So we wouldn't be able to push water up there without pumping it. In years past, the question has always been whether we would be able to push it. And when I say Cold Hill, I mean the top of Cold Hill, not at the intersection of Pleasant and Cold Hill in High Street. You can see right where Morgan Street ends, it says 260.
Yeah.
That's the feet. We have 58 pounds right there. And so to go to 280, it's not even a 10-pound drop for us to go to that 280 feet, which is right at the Cold Hill High Street intersection. So we'd be putting water over that piece right there, somewhere probably around 45 pounds. And then it would, as it drops back down, the pressure would obviously increase again going towards Five Corners. So the corners, that whole area down there, you can see the elevation marks on there. Even all the way up to Finn's Hill, we should technically, and again, I'm not an engineer, but based on science and math, we should be able to put, close to 40 pounds, 45 pounds right at, as a static pressure at Finn's Hill. I had a brief conversation with Chief O'Neill today, and also I reached out to Dave from the Highway Department to see if he had any, concerns or thoughts about it. And he didn't really seem to have, too many concerns. He said it would be a good thing. I know the fire chief's concern primarily is that area up by Finn's Hill, with Granby Grain being across the street and the storage units down the road. So I think that would be really important, but getting through across Five Corners and getting water on this stretch for you guys, I think is, would be a big step in the right direction. All these areas that I have highlighted in here, these could be phases. This isn't something that would have to happen right away. But I think the main road there from coming down Morgan to Pleasant, crossing through Five Corners, that yellow line on that side, we could extend. I wasn't sure how far you guys, what exactly you were looking for. I kind of figured it was fire protection for the corners and for these buildings that are here now, that I know there's been a lot of talk that some people would like to do some stuff, but they can't because they'd have to put fire ponds and everything else, and it was going to be so costly to do it. Just so you guys are aware, on the top, I did put a total of the feet of pipe. And it would be, if you were to do everything on this map right now, and I got a number from Halleck Water right now, they're using $250 a foot installed as an installed price. So that project that you're looking at in the yellow right there would be about 3.8 million, just a little over that, to do all of that area if you were going to do it all at one time. And again, if you can change it however you want, to look at different options, and it's $250 a foot is what they said for an installed price.
What name is that?
That was Halleck Water out of Ludlow.
That is fun.
H-A,
UICH.
yeah, sounds right. And again, that would go out to bid and that wouldn't, but just for budgeting purposes, that they felt that that should be a safe number, that you wouldn't exceed unless you ran into some really strange things.
You said it was a 10-inch pipe?
We have a 10-inch, so I would increase and go from a 10 to a 12-inch. And I would recommend that you guys do 12-inch main lines. And then when you branch off, you would put T's for the side streets, and then you would do a 12 by 8-inch pipe would feed all the side streets. And that's for many different reasons, but mainly for flow and fire protection at that point.
Do you have any questions, Dave?
So would they break this down as you've broken it down? If we wanted to go so far, they would obviously give us a portion of the price if we brought it, say, to Finn's Hill. That would be, or are they looking to do, or would you look to do entire project all at once?
No, that's what I mean, you can kind of break it out in terms of costs and do it in like phases, I would call it,
Phase it up.
I mean, to do all this in 1 year anyways, even if you had a huge company come in, this would be a lot to do and complete in a year. I mean, you're looking at, at least probably 2 to 3 years worth of work for an outside company here. But I know that there's kind of a little bit of a time crunch with the corners and construction already going on and things happening there now. So my suggestion would be certainly to come down through the corners, get through there and get up and down 202 and get that established. Once the pipe's in the ground, it's in the ground. They can do whatever they want and finish paving and but that certainly would be a restriction. Once that is completed, they're not going to want you digging on a brand new pavement.
So the moratorium that would be put in place, when would that happen if we finish that,
Right.
right?
As a matter of fact, if I was looking at this right now, I might have them just get that, have a company come in and get across in that intersection and get pipe north and south and east and west at that intersection and out of their scope of work. And then that's all set. You know what I mean? So then they could continue off. Cause it doesn't matter which way they run the pipe. If they run it from here to us or from us to you, it's not going to make a difference. And then I just, again, this is more informational. It's a first meeting. I had no idea which direction you guys were, going to try to go with, eventually would you guys take over the pipe and have a person working for the DPW that would run, the Granby and we would wholesale water to you? Or are you looking for us to fill the pipe and take care of all the billing in terms of like the meters and all that kind of stuff? I mean, there's a lot of other aspects to this that we can, look into in the future too, if we get that far. But I think the first thing would be to, whoever you guys used as an engineer last time, probably, reach out to them, and have them look at what we currently have and, see if it would be feasible for you guys to do it. I can tell you the price of water mains has gone up drastically,
Yeah.
like everything else since COVID. So,
Yeah, and it's not gonna go down.
No.
We supply water to a few residents for the Granby and Redmond. So we-
Correct.
Right.
those we do, correct, yeah.
On Morgan Street?
Yeah.
No, on Mary Lyon Drive. There's-
There's keep like the same kind of buildings. You guys a little bit long, because it's on bottom.
Right.
And you guys bill that to them now?
Yeah, we go under the right way, so I don't think we would keep the same thing.
Do you go Pleasant Street? Isn't there water on Pleasant Street too?
Pleasant Street, we don't have water. No, it's right to the town line and, the last 2 houses in South Hadley have our water, but not a house in, well, actually one of the houses shares is that First Street down on Breezy? She shares an address. She's got 290 Morgan and 1 Breezy. So I don't,
Is this something you guys are gonna be looking for funding on to do this, or it's gonna be capital improvement?
So we did file for the One Stop for Growth grant, last year and this year for water down 202. I think we didn't get it and I can't speak for them because I don't think we've heard back from them yet, Chris, right? I don't think we got it because we didn't do the legwork. you have to do the legwork and have everything to present to them first.
Yeah.
And so this was us trying to move it forward and doing the legwork and trying to figure out how we're gonna do it. And I know the last time it was District 1 they were gonna hook up to and come down. So another option we were looking into is District 2, because we know it's on Morgan Street already. So just trying to see what our different options are.
I mean, also that option, we can come down to Morgan, we can tie and loop back into District 1, which is a good thing. Because their water line comes right down where it's run. On Morgan.
So I think it was District 2 one.
Morgan Street and Granby, he's referring to. So if we went through 5 corners and you continued down Pleasant Street to Morgan, District 1 has a line there that's capped. That I saw when I saw some of the initial plans that that's the loop they were going to try to make in case something happened to their line on New Ludlow Road, they'd be able to feed water to their district over Morgan Street and then down Pleasant and down here.
I guess what we're saying is we have the availability of providing water.
Right,
To a point.
Yeah.
Guess it's on you guys how to figure out.
right,
I get-
yeah.
All those grants that you're referring to, there's the term they use, it's called shovel ready. And that's all the grants for us too now. They want them shovel ready, meaning everything's pretty much done. So you're handing in the packet, they're looking at it and saying, okay, put it out to bid. And then that's how those grants are coming about. So.
Do you know when the intersection was expected to be completed?
I think it's a 3 to 4 year project between 5 Corners and School Street, right, Chris? Yeah.
So I mean, it'd be so 4 to 5 years and it'd be a moratorium, probably 5 years out of that. So if we can get stuff going in between, it probably not even.
Right.
I don't know if they're paving in sections too. It might be paving in sections as they rip it up. They have a number on the side. They never came to the board and discussed anything with us. It's a state highway, so they did what they wanted and we're just.
You're stuck with it.
Yeah. So, we'll have to look up the,
Simple phone call, where part of that state section, and be like, hey, we're thinking of running water through here. Is that a huge problem?
is there anything else you can think of? Do you remember who the name of the engineer was? Because she gave me the information, but I don't think it had a name of the engineer.
I'm going to say it was Lincoln White, I think. I'd have to go back and look at my emails.
Because you didn't get a name on the email she sent you either, right?
No, she just,
The information, but
Yeah.
not. the company name.
there's probably a name or a number on there. I could look it up and reach out too. I think the easiest thing would probably be a phone call, have a quick conversation with them, and, go from there.
Think, well, if you're okay with it, we can have Chris give the engineer a call and see if it's something. But Chris, if they come out, you don't have to pay them to come out.
More than likely.
Yeah. So then now we have to figure out where those funds are gonna come from. So we already had a.
Pete Lincoln was his name.
Pete Lincoln?
He was with Chapel Engineering Associates. You want a number?
Please, thank you.
508-481-7400.
He in charge of the project up there.
No, he was
You, who we.
he did all our drawings.
Even on this end here, we only, like that map that you have, it stops at, the corner of, the pizza place here, Pizza Palace. I mean, that can be extended up 202, but, like I said, the more distance you go, I wasn't really sure 100% exactly what you guys were looking for. So we just did it that way for now. And all that can be changed, added to.
Was it just the drawings that she had sent you?
Yeah, all that. Yep.
Okay,
Those there. Yep.
Then she sent the municipal preparedness vulnerability grant that you guys filed.
Yep.
From 2018.
And I think, I know that the state and the feds for infrastructure are giving out a lot of money if you have everything in order. So like I said, the shovel ready, and it's like, I think that's why your last one probably got kicked back or you haven't heard anything yet. But if you get it to that point, there's probably a pretty good chance that there's some funding out there available for it.
So depending on the funding that we possibly could get, where would you go with this? And stop there?
Right
Try to go
now,
farther depending on the
it
funding.
depends on what you put in for. If you put in, for that whole project, that whole scope that you have right there at once, and they gave you the money for it, you could still do it in sections. You wouldn't have to all just do it in 1 year. But certainly I would come down Morgan, go through the intersection and go, get out of their scope of work for this job up Pleasant. And then you put a cross in the ground at the intersection there and go up to Finn's Hill and come down to like Pizza Palace or wherever. I just use that as stopping. I know that there was some talk and some issues with the bridge. That was the one thing Dave mentioned with this river crossing right here from this little estuary that feeds down.
Yeah.
There was a question about crossing the water line on that bridge, and the amount that it was going to cost. So in this case, you may not have to go across that. When I spoke to Chief O'Neill, there is a hydrant in District 1 that's less than 1,000 feet up the road here that District 1 would grab as a water supply. And we could put a hydrant at the end of the water main wherever we chose to stop that, whether it was right at the pizza place or come up a little farther and put a hydrant right there. And either travel way he has a hydrant on both ends.
I don't think you'll be able to go beyond the pizza place because that's where the last one ended. They paved,
From the paving, so that's
Yeah.
down to them. Okay,
right, so that'll be about the only place you could go to. Because you're in your moratorium right now.
yeah.
You probably
For
have
the
like another 2 years on that at least.
Up to from here to Pizza Palace around that.
Right.
Which means if we rip it up, we have to pay that, right? That's more fine.
Pave the whole thing.
The whole road.
Yeah, they don't
Yeah.
want patches.
Section.
They don't
Yeah.
want patches.
Yeah, but
Unless it's an emergency.
But that section from here where the town line is to Pizza Palace is what we would be paving, right?
And I don't think you'd want to get involved with that either, because then anytime you disturb their moratoriums, and even if you repaved it and 6-8 months from now, there ends up being a dip in the road, you guys own it. You know what I mean? They're just going to keep continually going back to, you tore the road up before the 5 years.
I mean, it's usually a 5-year moratorium, so, that's really not long. The scope on having lifetime water.
Right.
Which is why Glenn had said District 2 go this way instead of coming this way.
Yeah.
I mean, that bridge crossing, Tim, we had bridge crossings all the time, and it's not that big. It was like,
It was like I think it was almost $200,000 to cross that section of the bridge, Yeah.
They
And
were
that-
going, they were gonna go above, not tunnel below.
They were gonna hang
yeah,
it.
they hang on the bridge.
Yeah.
He was gonna do it that way, so.
And again, that's all something too. If there is the moratorium on the road for a couple more years and you brought the water down to Pizza Palace and it stopped after the moratorium was up, you would just have to budget for it, but then you could do that section. The downside is there would be a valve between our district. Right now, we share 9 valves with District 1 water for emergencies. So if he has an issue, like a couple weeks ago, his transmission line coming in from Ludlow got hit. So we opened a valve to feed him. He's fed us in the past multiple times during emergencies. So we can feed each other water. So that's what would end up at the town line right here. So it's not super imperative to get in this stretch here to get water, because the fire trucks obviously have large diameter hose on them, makes their own water main essentially above the ground. And so I think I don't want to speak for Chief O'Neill, but I think that being 1,000 feet there, and if we had a hydrant at Pizza Palace, that would be, yeah, he has enough hose on his truck to actually to go from one to the other. Not that you would, but he would have that ability if he needed it.
Here's another question too, is one day, like, if, you know, get X amount of dollars to charge residents for tying into the water, how would how that would work, how you would break it down?
This is mine and Dave's first time being involved in this.
Okay.
So we weren't involved in that first project. So our initial meeting was just to see what could be offered,
Mhm.
what we could do to tie into District Two.
Yep.
I know Glenn was part of it, but unfortunately he was unable to be here tonight, so he would have been a little bit more knowledgeable to help us out there, but I don't know what what the plan was back in 2018 when they originally were gonna do it, because there's not too many houses here, so it'd be the businesses tying in, right?
You know, we were gonna basically use ARPA funds in addition to, some betterment fees, because they, by running a water line in front of their business, it increases the value of their property. So you're allowed to take the cost of the project and break it out over the number of buildings that could tie into it. And you can pay for it at that point by that method, and they can pay up to 20 years. You know, it's just another mechanism for financing large infrastructure projects.
That'd be through taxation, right?
So if it was gonna be houses that could tie in, you would have to figure out how much we would charge the houses for a hookup fee then. If they chose to hook up.
It's based on a calculation, yes.
And Chris, because our businesses and our residential pay the same tax rate, they would get the same, or is it based on square footage at that point?
I would want to go back and read the betterment law a little bit better. But that is the mechanism you would use, the fund.
Typically, the charge for a water service going into a house is based on the size, the diameter of the service. So for instance, most residential homes would use a 1-inch water service. Versus a business might have 2 lines going in. They'd have a fire sprinkler and then a domestic water line. And so the fire sprinkler, there would be a charge for that line, and then there would be a charge for the, based on size again, of the domestic line. Most businesses on this road would use a 1-inch for domestic. Most people think they need a 3-inch, but you don't. 1-inch is more
So it's
than
either
enough
a
water.
1-inch or a 3-inch that they get offered.
No, because the fire sprinklers are usually a 6-inch line, going in to feed the sprinklers. So
Yeah, like our typical residential tie-in on some county and construction is around.
it's $2,000 an inch pretty much is the fee. So for a 1-inch service, it's $2,000. But again, with the cost of everything going up, if you do the whole job, if we do blacktop and we obviously figure out man hours and stuff like that, a residential water service now is running about anywhere between $8,000 and $10,000 total cost. That's meter, that's into the house, that's everything. And I just did a bill for somebody the other day. I can print one up and send it over to you guys or email it. I have your email. I can email you over what it would look like, just so you can see it and see the other numbers and what's involved.
I think that would be helpful. If we have
Yeah.
to do a total price or a total cost. Thank you for doing all the
Yep.
the work that you did on this. We still have the ARPA funds, correct, Chris? We didn't reallocate us during town meeting.
So strictly going for grants or taxation.
Yes.
And again, I'm sure you guys are gonna think of a bunch of questions, you know, in the next couple days. I know you have my number and my email. Feel free to reach out if you have any, you know, questions, concerns, or thoughts about things. I know it's early. I have a lot of good, what I think are good ideas moving forward. How do we can get people to transfer over? Because I know that was one of the things the last time, a lot of people, there was a pretty significant cost to some people, and a lot of people are of the mindset, well, it's working perfectly fine. Why would I want to switch over to public water and spend, I'm not going to spend $10,000 or $8,000. So I got a lot of things in mind that might work. Some ideas that might attract people initially and draw, you know, get a good draw to them. But those are all things I think we're a little far out for that yet.
Do you have any more questions, Dave, like this though?
No, I don't think so. It's a lot of information, so.
Yeah. I think, just looking at it to start with, we're definitely gonna have to do it in phases. I don't think it's something financially that we can do. And like you
Right.
said, it's at least a 2 to 3 year project with what you've laid out so far.
Mhm.
But I think if we concentrate on 202, at least getting those pipes in,
Mhm.
and then we can tie into it later.
Right.
I think that's something that we definitely should do, because of the moratorium that's gonna be put on it when the project's done.
Yep.
So that's something that I think is of high priority right now. So I know, our other board member isn't here right now, so I'd like to, put this on the agenda for next meeting, Chris, where, the board can discuss different options. And I will reach out if I have any questions.
Absolutely.
And,
Yep.
Chris, I know you have his number and his email, right? Or I can send it to you. It's right on the town of South Hadley website under District 2 Water. But so you can send it to Glenn if Glenn has any questions or anything too. Before our
Sure.
next meeting.
Yep.
It's a lot, but I definitely appreciate the work that you put into it.
No problem.
Lot to think about.
Perfect.
Nothing else?
No. So,
Excellent.
Thank you so much.
Thank
for
you.
Thank you,
coming in.
guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, it is 6:14. Our next appointment 6:15. Do you have anything else that you can do quickly, Chris?
Real quick, town accountant position. The
Yes.
person who had filed a application withdrew. So what I'm gonna do is re-advertise again on the MMA website. And we will advertise in the Daily Hampshire Gazette. And hopefully attract somebody to apply for the position.
And no reason why they withdrew, they just withdrew.
She
the
just said no longer
application.
interested. Yeah.
I think we've talked about this before, Chris, but what is that other website that a lot of people use? We don't do it, LinkedIn or anything like that. It's extra money, right? You have to do a subscription.
Indeed, Indeed was $75 for every applicant that we opened up. And that can get kind of expensive when they send anybody who would have an accounting degree, not necessarily municipal experience.
Right.
So, you know, say if someone's just a bookkeeper somewhere, when they applied, they'd send that and we'd have to pay $75
Yeah,
to be able to look at
that's
that.
expensive.
You know, we want more qualified individuals if we're gonna start looking at things of that nature.
not a municipal.
And what is the qualifications for the town account? Because I know they have to have a specialty in municipalities. So what's the exact,
Mass municipal,
okay,
well, basically it's, yeah, what's it called? Yeah, it's a specialized accounting system. UMIS, the UMIS accounting.
Humans.
Yep. It's called the Uniform Massachusetts Accounting System. That we look for experience in. And we usually try and get them to become a certified governmental accountant. And they can do that by going to the annual accountant school for 3 years. And then taking the law and the practical portions and passing both portions and then they will get their certification.
So you said certified governmental accountant and what was the second one? Passing the law portion.
To get that certification, there's 2 parts. The law and then practical. And the law is usually the toughest part to pass. Some people can take them 3 to 4 times to take it at the end of school.
All right. All right, so it is 6:17. So our next appointment is with the International Brotherhood of Police Officers. So if
And
you guys.
there's Jack.
Forward. Hi, Jack.
Hi there.
So Jack, I know you probably remember me, Crystal Dufresne, and we have our new board member, David Labonte.
Welcome. Good to meet you both. Good to see you both.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jim Bartolome. I'm the national rep for the IBPO union group here in Granby. And tonight we're in front of you for a level 3 grievance hearing. We had started this process on one of the handouts that I gave you, the number 1, mark number 1. It has just kind of a little background as to how long this has been going on. This has been going on since April of 24, and we've kind of come through since November of 23. And then we've come through the process of meeting with the chief and having it denied, and then meeting with the town, and then getting together with the bargaining committees that negotiated the contract, and then moving on to meeting with you. When we negotiated the contract, the town wanted to include the lieutenant's position, which is a non-union position, into the contract to go into the detail rotation. At the time, we had one list for details and overtime for all union members. The lieutenant was not a union member, so he was not in that list. So the list rotated, whether you took a detail or an overtime shift. Every time you took one, you would go to the bottom of the list, but it was all union members. So that was very easy to have one list that rotated through for both overtime and details. We negotiated with the town, and the town put some benefits into the contract in order to include the lieutenant in that detail list rotation. So in the in one of the handouts that I give you, number 4, you can see I highlighted what was put in there: a detail call list, including all full-time, part-time officers, as well as the lieutenant or other officers not in the bargaining union. So that's what we agreed to, was a detail list, including all full-time, part-time, as well as the lieutenant or other officers not in the bargaining unit. After we negotiated that and it was put into the contract and it was agreed to, we realized that with the lieutenant in the detail list and only having one list, that the lieutenant was benefiting more and the union members were benefiting less because of the way the town implemented the language that was agreed to. So for example, if I can just show you real quickly. we have a list here of 11 officers, and the lieutenant is number 6. As each officer, if number 1 takes an overtime detail, he moves off the list. He goes to the bottom. If number 2 takes a detail, he moves off the list and goes to the bottom also. The lieutenant never moves off the list. If the lieutenant takes overtime, he doesn't move off the list and go to the bottom. He continues to move up the list. So with every union member that takes either a detail or overtime, they go to the bottom of the list. The lieutenant doesn't go to the bottom of the list when he takes overtime. He stays at his number and moves up the detail list, meaning that the lieutenant is getting a detail quicker than the union members. So what we proposed to the town, and we thought that this was an easy proposition, was that we have 2 lists. One for details with the lieutenant included in it that would rotate through, and when you take a detail, you go to the bottom of the list. And one for overtime, which is just union members. And as they worked overtime, they would go to the bottom of the list. This wasn't received well by the town for some reason, and we can't figure out why. But the town would have you believe that the union agreed to having the lieutenant on this one list. And they're going to talk about having 2 lists in the past and going to 1 list, because they had 2 in the past and went to 1. But when they went to 1, it was only union members. But when we included the lieutenant onto the list this last time after our negotiations, we now need 2 lists because we need a detail list with the lieutenant included and an overtime list with just the union members. So that it's fair as each one moves through, they would all get to move up the list correctly. We didn't see it as being that big a deal. The lieutenant gets the benefit that that the town wanted to give to him if we have 2 lists or we have 1 list. He gets more of a benefit if we keep it as 1 list, which is not what we agreed to. The original agreement that we had made would not have passed the union body had they known that the lieutenant was going to be on this 1 list and not be bumped off as he took overtime or anything like that. It just wouldn't have passed. We had a hard time getting the body to agree to even what we did agree to. But then when it was interpreted differently, it became an issue. So we're hoping that the town will see fit to just have 2 lists. In that handout that I gave you, there's, I believe it's number, let me see, what did I do with it? I'm sorry. At the end of number 2 in the handout was the proposal that we sent to the town, just asking for the wording to have 2 separate lists, a list for details and a list for overtime. We had sent that over throughout this process as we were trying to come to an agreement. It doesn't seem like that big a deal. I don't understand why we got this far. In the contract, we already talked about handout number 4, which is the wording that we agreed to. Handout number 3 discusses hours of work, which discuss how overtime is handed out in the department. And there's nothing in here that changed about an overtime list. There's nothing in here that talks about the lieutenant getting overtime. There's nothing in here. It's just how they divvy up their overtime. But the town is going to have you believe that we agreed to this 1 list, when in reality, what we agreed to was just the lieutenant being part of a detail list, 1 detail list. And therefore, you would have to have an overtime list also, because the lieutenant is not included in that group. The lieutenant gets overtime sometimes, but it's after it goes through the entire union group. If nobody takes it, the lieutenant can then take the overtime. So there are 2 different rules, sets of rules that govern each of those things. And in order for those 2 sets of rules to work, you need 2 different lists. You can't have 1 list that governs how both of those things work. So what we're asking the town to do is just to create 2 lists, 1 for details that still includes the lieutenant, and he would rotate through just like everybody else. As he moves up the list and he gets to the top, he goes to the bottom, just like everybody else.
It's stationary at this point. Explain that,
Stationary meaning,
meaning. he-
I just put him
Six
on that list. I put him on there so
He
that,
goes to the bottom.
no, he goes to the bottom.
He
If,
does, okay.
after he's worked his detail, he goes to the bottom. I
Okay.
only put him on there as number 6, just to show you a list, to show you that as number 1 takes overtime, he moves off the list and the lieutenant moves to number 5. As number 2 takes overtime, he moves off the list.
It does rotate.
It rotates through and the lieutenant eventually gets to the top of the list. But the problem is you have 2 groups, a detail list and an overtime list, that the patrolman, if they take either one, they move off that list. But the lieutenant doesn't move off that list. Like, he doesn't move if he takes either one. If he takes overtime, he stays right where he is on that list and he moves. But yet the union member, if they take overtime, they go to the bottom of that list. And now the lieutenant moves up faster. So that's, I mean, if you have any other questions, please.
So, I actually do have a question. When we went, so I was part of the negotiations the last time. So when we went to you guys and asked for the lieutenant to be put in on the list,
Yes.
you only had one list at that point.
Correct.
So that one list is what was put in place, and that's what we were ruling on, was that one list, correct?
The
I guess that's where
agreement,
I'm confused.
the agreement was to
always
put,
only one list since.
well,
I've
there
been on.
was 2 lists years ago. And then we went to 1 list, but the 1 list was fine as long as it was only union members. Because then it didn't matter if you took a detail or overtime, you just went to the bottom of the list and you kept rotating through. So it didn't make a difference. But now that we've put a non-union member on the detail list at the request of the town, we need 2 lists because the lieutenant is only on the detail list in a rotation. On the overtime list, he's only at the bottom after everybody else goes. So there's 2 different sets of rules for where the lieutenant falls on each list. And what we're saying is that during negotiations, we believed it was going to be a detail list, which is what the wording says, a detail list, not a detail overtime list, a detail list. But when it came out, the interpretation by the town was it's 1 list, details and overtimes, and the lieutenant just rotates through. And that didn't work out for the union. That's not the agreement that we made. That's not what we agreed to. But that's the interpretation of the wording that was written down in the contract. We probably should have been thinking of that ahead of time, but it wasn't thought of because we believed that it was going to be one way. And we believe that this wording that's in the contract says that it is the way we thought it was going to be. But then when it started to be interpreted, the town interpreted it a different way. And that's when we came back together to try and figure it out.
Do you have any more questions, Bill?
It's, I mean, I wasn't involved in the original conversation, so it's hard for me to determine exactly what's right and wrong here. I mean, obviously, it's in your contract written as it is.
Correct. But the 2 sides are interpreting that exact sentence.
So it's a misunderstanding. between
Exactly. And when we came
misinterpretation
back,
of one
yes.
to the other.
When we came back to the town after the original grievance was denied by the chief, and then we met together with the bargaining group, both this town side and our side, we admitted that neither side thought about this while we were at the table. We both walked out thinking we were getting something that we wanted or that we agreed to. And then once we were done, we realized that the town interpreted it one way and we interpreted it another way. When I read that sentence, I read it as a detail list, meaning 1 detail list. That's it, a detail list, not a detail / overtime list. you know, there's other stuff that governs how overtime is. And once again, the lieutenant moving through the detail list and not moving through the overtime list clearly states that there's two different definitions of how those two lists would work. The lieutenant only gets overtime after everybody denies it on the overtime side. And the lieutenant moves up the list through the detail list as each person takes the detail. He just moves up like everybody else. And that's what we agreed to. We agreed to those two separate things. And afterwards, it was brought to our attention that that's not how it was going to be implemented. So that's why the grievance was filed.
How long has it been going on?
Since last year in the fall.
The last
Yeah, right.
2023.
Yes,
So it's
yes.
since then.
So yeah, it hasn't been forever, but it's been a long time. You know, we've been trying to get through this process. So we're not saying that we thought of this in the negotiations and we told them that and that they did it a different way. We're saying that neither side thought that it was going to be something else. And then when we were done and it was written, we thought, okay, we got the wording we wanted, and they thought something different. And then now we're at an impasse, but we gave the benefit to the lieutenant of being in the detail list, but we didn't give the benefit of the lieutenant to get more details than the union members.
I don't have any more questions. I understand where you're coming from.
Okay.
I do want to give the chief a chance to talk as well.
Well, two of the members, one's here, one couldn't make it tonight. We discussed this calling procedure that we have in this DTS system that fills details. And it was discussed on the different tiers within the lists. And Zach Gilly and I had a conversation during negotiations, and we both believe we were on the same page with, yep, you can have one list and with details and overtime being filled, and there's different tiers, and the lieutenant is in a different tier for overtime. So again, he does not move until he's the last one. It's kind of the same as if somebody's forced to stay, as far as the union members are concerned, they don't get charged either. So there's some things that they don't get charged for either when they're moving on the list. If they're forced to stay over, then they remain in place as well.
So even though it's all one list,
Yep.
when overtime is available, it's still, as it's stated in their contract, it goes to all part-timers first, then for straight time, and then if they don't take it, it then follows the full-time dispatcher for overtime, then police overtime, then part-time police overtime, then part-time dispatch overtime.
Right, whoever's eligible. Correct.
So it goes down that list, even though
There's one list.
there's one list.
Correct, because he's in a different tier. So it's everything's in tiers in this system, and it allows it to roll over.
Can you explain the tiers a little bit more and not?
Like, as you were listing those different people,
Yeah.
there's like part-timers are in one tier.
Okay.
Full-timers are in another tier, the lieutenant's in another tier. And those tiers, it is how within that tier, there's numbers, and that's what's rotated, and depending on what is being filled, the system is smart enough to say it awards who is getting the shift when by the numbers and availability. But the availability through the numbers where they are in that tier and that number.
So you don't even choose.
But the system does it, correct. We input it, put it out as what's available, and then it goes out to everybody, and they bid on it. Right, they bid on it, and depending on where their number is whether they're awarded it or not, depending on how many, what it is.
So it's not solely your decision.
Well, it's not my decision, no.
Shares, did you say?
I think 3 or 4, depending on what type of shift you're trying to fill or detail or,
No, it's the lieutenant. So there's 4 tiers and then lieutenant's out on his own.
On the overtime part of it, he's within the same tier as when it comes to details.
I guess what I'm confused on now is that even though there's one list, based on the tiered system that you just gave us, there's 4 tiers. Everyone in all the 4 tiers gets called first for overtime. If nobody takes it, then it goes to the lieutenant if you.
Because he would be like the 4th tier. So tier 1 is offered, tier 2 is offered, tier 3 is offered, and then he's like the 4th tier. I'm just using a number off the top of my head.
You have to wait until they all respond, or you just,
No, it's out there. It's out there. They have 15 minutes.
is it like an app or something?
It's like an app.
Okay.
It's DTS Works is what it's called. It's an app. It gets put out there, but the system is smart enough to know that, okay, this person's a tier 1. He would get it before tier 2 or tier 3, like
You have to put each officer in or each person in has their tier.
as their tiers. Correct.
And then within those tiers, they rotate.
Correct. And depending on whether it was a overtime or detail was the different tiers.
So it should never get to the 4th tier unless everyone else.
Any eligible employee rejected, correct. Didn't take it. Which in that in turn is kind of the same as if somebody's forced to stay, then they don't get charged either.
And are the tiers based on, excuse me, seniority and or part-time, full-time? Is it
Yeah,
still-
part-time, full-time, yes, exactly.
Based on the call list.
Yes,
So first tier, for example, would be.
roughly, yes. It just depending on how it goes by that, but yes, I can't say for sure that it's tier 1, it's tier something, but yes, on the availability, yes, and how it's awarded. The company that designed it has all that information.
So even though you're essentially doing from what you explained, what they asked for, they just want to see 2 lists.
No, if I can I address you?
Sorry, Chief, can you come up to the mic so they can hear you? Yes. Because if that tiered system is correct, then it would be.
The tiered system addresses the overtime. It
Okay.
doesn't address the details.
Okay.
So it's just overtime that's addressed under a tiered system. And the tiered system is exactly what you said. It's part-time, then full-time, then dispatch, then lieutenant. And it runs through that list, similar to what it says right there. Details are a completely separate thing. So the discussion that we had, or the chief had with one of the union members during negotiations without the rest of us being there, addressed DTS and how that works, which is fine. But we're not talking about DTS. We're talking about the detail list, which is also run by DTS, but it's just a simple, you're in that line of 1 through 11. And when you take a detail or overtime for the union members, you move down in that list, on the detail list, the single list. But the lieutenant never moves from that list. When he takes overtime, he doesn't move down like the union members do. He stays where he is. So if he's number 6 and he takes overtime, he stays number 6. But if you're number 1 and you take overtime,
That's what I was
Yeah.
asking earlier.
if you're number 1 and you take overtime, you go to number 11, which is the way it was. And that was, once again, that was fine when it was only union members and everybody was in the same boat. But when you put the non-union member in, which is what the town asked for and we agreed to, we realized that that's not fair, that the non-union member never goes to the bottom of the list when he takes overtime, but the union member does. And we're just trying to correct that. And the simple correction for that is just two separate lists. The lieutenant still stays on the detail list and still moves up through the detail list, just like everybody else. The difference is the way we want it, the lieutenant doesn't get an extra benefit of every time a union member takes overtime, he moves closer to that detail than the rest of the union members do. Does that make sense? Okay, thank you.
I would just like to clarify that that was not some off topic set conversation. That was during negotiations. That conversation. That was not a private conversation between myself and Officer Gilly or anybody else. That was during negotiations.
Okay, thank you. Chris, do you have anything you want to add? All right, call on Attorney Collins. Hi, Attorney Collins.
Hey there.
So, I think I completely understand it now.
Okay, that's,
So I don't know that I necessarily have any questions for him. Do you have any questions for him?
No, I guess
All right,
some input would be.
yeah, some input would be nice,
all right.
but I now fully understand.
Keep in mind that the name is Collins, it's not Solomon here, so we don't have any great wisdom to solve this
I'm
problem.
gonna just turn the volume up for a minute. We can't.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Any better? How are we doing? 1, 2, 3.
Oh.
Jamie, all right? Yes, right in front of you, the remote.
Yep, got it.
No, it's right on the table, the remote.
It should be up now.
Just turn that.
Yours is up, but ours is not up on the TV, so we couldn't hear you.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Testing 1, 2, 3. Okay now?
good. We're good.
Okay. Let's bring you back to a time when the negotiations were in talk. Jim Mahalomu was there. So was Chris, so was the chief, so were several union members. Clearly, I think everything that the union talked about here on the face of it is correct. That the town wanted to put, have the lieutenant in rotation, and that was what was agreed to. Now, and that's what the contract says. Remember that a grievance is an allegation that somebody's violating the written contract. And I think, to be fair to the union, what they're saying is, yeah, the contract does say that, but that's not really what we expected it to mean. Okay? And I believe that. I think in fairness, some of the union members were very well aware of it because it was talked about during the meeting. Okay, but some of the people, those people have been replaced, I guess. Some people looked at it later on and said, "Oh my God, that we really didn't know what we're getting into." The problem is if it were the other way around. Okay? If the contract said a certain thing, if it said in there, by the way, we're going to pay you $1,500 for having a master's degree, and it was a mistake. We really meant it to mean whatever. Okay? The union would win. They'd go to arbitration. The arbitrator would look at the contract and say, that is what it says, isn't it? Okay. So in general, grievances are interpretations of what the contract says. So listening to the union tonight, and I've heard this a couple of times already, I think in fairness, what they're saying is, yes, we agreed to what the language is in there. Town didn't change the language after it was negotiated. They brought it to their membership. And I believe, okay, that they didn't either understand it or explain it well enough to the membership, who probably would have had a heartache over it if they really understood what was going on. That's a possibility, okay? In fairness to the town negotiated the contract. It made a proposal. It was discussed not secretly by the chief and one person, but by a couple of people, who will testify, I assume, that, yeah, this was all talked about in open session. So in any event, for right now, we're partway through a 3-year contract. Every once in a while, a lieutenant is probably getting more under the contract than what the union people are happy about. Remember that a lot of things in town government have to do with personalities. And if the lieutenant and the certain people in the union were getting along better, quite frankly, this probably wouldn't be here. But here we are. Okay? So now you have to play judge and say, all right, did the town violate the contract? Because if you don't go along and make a decision. The union's gonna try to appeal and we'll see what happens. But in any event, I think what I heard the union say was, well, you didn't really violate. That is what the contract says, but Chuck, that's not what we meant. And I honestly believe that, when he says that Jim's telling the truth, okay, that may very well have been on their end, a misunderstanding by some of the people, okay? But the real problem is that that's what the town understood. The town understood that to be the case. That's what the language says, and that's what they implemented. So we're not violating the contract. The town is not violating the contract. The town's implementing the contract as it's written. Okay? So is there a middle ground? I don't know. You can think about all that. Or is it, no, sorry about that, you're stuck with it for 3 years. Okay, all those kind of things there ordinarily get resolved. As Jim said, when the town put that proposal in exchange for that, it gave the union some other things. So now is what they're saying is, well, by the way, we don't want to give you what you think you got for the lieutenant, but we're not going to give you back some other things that you gave us as well. Give and take usually means compromise. So here we are, where the union is saying, please rewrite the contract in a way that, well, if we thought about it more, we probably would have wanted it that way there. Okay. Not saying at all that Jim's not telling the truth, because I know him to be an honest and good person. Okay. Don't get the wrong idea. But unfortunately, he's stuck with some people right now are unhappy with the lieutenant getting, a bigger share than what they expected. How do you resolve this? Unfortunately, you can see it hasn't gotten resolved. They've tried it at different levels. They tried it at the chief's level. They tried it at Chris's level. Now it's to you. And my guess is, honestly, if you say, sorry about that, we're not going to do it, then they're going to try to see whether they can get some arbitrator to make a decision on this. This is not going to get resolved by anyone saying, hey, you're absolutely right, you're absolutely wrong. Unfortunately, the only right thing would be everybody to say, shucks, you know what, that's what we agreed to. We're going to have to live with it, and we'll never do it again. That's probably what, in the long run, this is going to come out to be. An arbitrator is not going to take a look and say, I'm stuck with looking at the four corners of the contract before I listen to any external information. As Jim will tell you, the arbitrator will look and say, what does the contract say? Are you violating the contract? No, you're not. Well, then therefore, I don't want to hear all these other stories. But that takes us a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of energy, and unfortunately, a lot of animosity that nobody benefits from. So I wish there was a baby we could cut in half like Solomon and figure out the right answer. But it looks like there's no movement in this situation. So I suppose this I would recommend to you is to take a look at the contract. If you think the contract is not being adhered to, then you ought to say, hey, by the way, Chief, I think you're reading the contract wrong. On the other hand, you listen to Chris and to the chief and you say, yeah, you are reading the contract right. You're implementing the contract as negotiated, but the union's not all that happy about it. Maybe you guys ought to go and talk and see if you can make some other, compromises back and forth. But bottom line, if you have to vote one way or the other, I recommend that you upheld the position of the chief and the town administrator and say, sorry, that's the deal. Nobody loves it. Nobody's happy about it, but that's the deal. So that's my input.
I don't know if you have the lieutenant's contract handy, but
I could probably pull it up.
I want to make sure I don't have his contract with me tonight, but I want to make sure we wouldn't be violating anything on his contract either.
Let me take a quick look at that for you, see if I have it. And I bet the chief probably knows it by heart, but I'm opening up.
No, he doesn't know by heart.
All right, so I got the lieutenant. Then we have. All right. I've got a police chief contract running from 21 to 24. And see if it opens up. Okay, I have his contract open. It runs through June 30th of this year. Okay, so it's expired. Don't Haven't got to the end of it to see whether it has an evergreen clause or not. It has an hours of work. It says he will be allowed to remain in the full-time rotation for overtime and off-duty details. Okay. So is it possible that by upholding their grievance, you'd be violating the lieutenant's contract? That is a possibility, although the contract, it looks like at this point in time, has expired. Let me take a look and see how long it lasts. Going to the end of the contract now.
If I can, the line.
Looks like the contract is expired, and I don't see any provision for it to extend. I can certainly take a longer look at it, but it looks to me as though if you do something now, you would not be violating his, well, let's see now. No, it's got some stuff in here about if you abolish his position and things like that, but short of that, looks like the contract has probably expired. I haven't heard anybody extending that contract or renewing it. At least nobody's talked to me about that.
Sorry, Jim, yes.
That's it.
Thank you, Attorney
The,
Collins.
the
Well,
one
you've got one
line.
provision that says unless either party provides written notice to the other of its intention to renegotiate or not renew the contract, then it will automatically extend, okay, for an additional year. So it looks to me as though if nobody has given any notice to each other about that contract, it probably stays in effect for another year.
Which would mean we would be.
Whereas he had,
Now we
and
have
that
to
will
figure out
employ,
what his contract means when it says he'll be in rotation for each of them, the details and the overtime in it. Certainly looks like there's a possibility of that, yes.
Could I speak to that?
I'm sure, I believe there's an
But Attorney Collins, we grieve that line in the line that says the police lieutenant will be allowed to remain in the full-time rotation for overtime and off-duty details. When he negotiated that with the select board, he did that alone with the select board, and that violated the patrolman's contract. We grieve that, and that was adjusted because it wasn't supposed to be put in there. So that line of him being on the detail list was
Good
taken
point. Keep in
out.
mind that right now, I'm opening that up now for the first time. in
Yeah.
a while, so
No problem. I just wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page. Thank
And
you.
I've got something here that talks about a lieutenant's addendum. Looks to me as though I've got it only in draft form, but assuming that's correct, give me a second. Yeah, you're striking out. Lieutenant would be allowed to remain in full-time rotation for overtime and detail, okay. And inserting that the lieutenant will be allowed to take overtime shifts after they have been offered to all eligible union members. And if he offered outside details after they've been offered to all eligible union members, so on and so forth. So again, keep in mind that, we had more time, I'd read it slower, but it looks to me as though you may not have as much of a problem with violating the lieutenant's contract. Now, the fact that you agreed with the union about where the lieutenant's going to be and he's not complaining about it means obviously that it sounds like there's no violation. So we're back to, again, is the chief violating the contract as it's written? And it sounds like, for better or worse, the answer probably is not. It sounds like he's living with the contract. Okay.
So I'm sorry, Attorney Collins, you said for the police lieutenant's contract, it says that he's only to get overtime or details after all eligible members have been given opportunity.
Yeah, so you wouldn't be if you're giving him more under the contract with the union than what his contract requires as a minimum, you wouldn't be violating his contract.
But then he wouldn't be on the list. He would be the very end of both lists every single time. And
No,
therefore, would not move up.
The superseding contract would be the union contract that you have there. So he gets whatever that contract you signed with the union is. He's just put into that. So the chief's interpretation and the manager's interpretation and mine, because I was there, okay, are that it would be as the chief has been implementing it.
Where he's on the list and he moves up.
Right. However the chief is doing it now. Honestly, was there tons of discussion for lots and lots of time about all that? It sounded to me as a union originally wanted one list and so on, but everybody's got their own recollection of all that. But bottom line, the way the chief's implementing it right now is consistent with what the union contract calls for.
Then shouldn't the lieutenant move down when he takes an overtime shift just like everybody else does?
I think the chief is the only one that can answer that. I apologize. It's not.
Because you're saying that the police officer's contract supersedes the
Right.
lieutenant.
Correct.
So
The lieutenant's contract for all legal purposes is not it doesn't impact at all the contract you have with the union. If you took and gave the lieutenant less than what his contract calls for, that'd be a problem. But if he's getting more under the union contract than what his contract calls for, then it's not a problem.
Yeah, I'll clarify that a little bit, Chief.
Yeah, with those tiers, he can be charged within that tier, but this tier is him by himself, so that's why it doesn't rotate that way. Like I kind of explained, like he's the last tier to get it, it's kind of like he's forced to stay, they don't get charged either.
So they stay in their position on the list because.
If they're
you
forced to
can't-
stay.
If they're,
Because you can't fill it in somebody else.
basically, it's the same, and he's the last one available,
For both details and overtime.
not details anymore because of the way the contract was.
But you just read the.
And like Jack tried to explain that the very minimum you get is what's in his contract, but when they negotiated, it would allow him to be in the detail rotation. In the detail. Yeah, like we got. Allow him to be put into the list, then that supersedes his.
Let's just say, for example, right now, the board would vote one way or the other. Let's say you voted and you said, by the way, we're going to stick with the provisions as the contract is written. Lieutenant has nothing he can complain about with that because he's getting more than what his contract calls for. If you voted to say, union, you're right. We're going to basically correct the contract, even though we might not have to. Lieutenant can't complain about that either because he won't get any less under your revised contract that he has under his present contract. So either way you vote, the lieutenant would not have any could not have any legal objection to it. So he's not a party to the union contract, so he can't say, "Oh, you're violating my rights under that." So whatever way you vote, the lieutenant is really outside of that. He'll end up respecting or living with whatever way you vote. Is there any indication how often this has become a problem? I mean, if one of the things the arbitrator is always going to ask is, hey, if we're a year and a half into the contract by the time we get to arbitration, okay, we're halfway through. Has the lieutenant now gotten 5 extra opportunities, 50 opportunities? Does anybody have some idea of how big a problem that the union is facing?
Do you have any numbers too?
No, dispatcher sir gave me like 6 weeks worth. And we discussed them and they see it one way, I see it that they filled several the same day. So everybody ended up with the detail anyway, so it didn't show anything as far as I was concerned.
You don't have that paperwork on you by any chance?
I can get the second, version.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
So I can give you separate documents as well, but this is a spreadsheet that I've been already.
You needed the officers' numbers?
I did. Well, it's their names, actually.
Yeah.
So, the color coded, what actually happens when the lieutenant gets a lieutenant shift. Technically, his number does rotate, but it's really good. He really reverts it out. It's previous to get on the shift.
Emanuel, that's it.
Okay. So that's what the orange is here, this is the words. The red of the future of this, say, on the details. Here, the jobs to detail and what the numbers of the benefits. So here, for example, you can see, Officer Brown took a detail here, his number rotates to 11. So you'll notice sometimes a person's number will rotate to 11, since there are 11 people in rotation for details, 10 officers plus the lieutenant. 11 is the lowest possible number that it can go. If you see a 10, there are 10 people in rotation for overtime, since the lieutenant is not technically in rotation for overtime. So whenever someone takes an overtime shift, it's to 10. And then, as I said, if the lieutenant gets it, he will rotate and then the workers will back to the previously.
For the detail.
For overtime, say, I bought this up for that's what Jim was talking about, how lieutenant is able to faster up the list because when he takes overtime, he does not rotate to the bottom of the list. It reverts back to what his number was previously. Now he has the better opportunity to get him to the bottom.
It's the 24 here.
And
Because the highest you can be is 11 and 10,
it
right?
should be, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know where that comes from. I did notice that there were some anomalies. There's some odd ways that UTS handles some of the rotation. I think if two details resolve at the same time, sometimes it mixes up who goes to which spot, or excuse me, how it's shown in the rotation. I can certainly get you the documentation for all of the assignments that actually one of those that's allowed. And what the chief said was.
You said blue was OT?
Blue is correct. So I believe there were one or two unambiguous situations where the lieutenant with speaking in detail. They were reading them, the others pointing out where this can be really rotation, we are reading one rotation. It's impossible to say how often we would get. So it's impossible to say how often we can really get the detail of their side as this, because everything is just mixed together.
I couldn't hear everything the gentleman was saying there, but understand that if you go to arbitration, the arbitrator will say, even if I rule for the union, I have to have an actual concrete number of opportunities that the lieutenant had that otherwise he shouldn't have had. Okay, and how much does all that add up to, and how much money and where does it go? So if it's impossible, the last phrase the officer said, if it's impossible to figure all that out, quite frankly, unfortunately, the arbitrator may very well say, sorry, even if I rule for the union, I can't give you any remedy because there's no clear way to figure out what the damages are. So what he's going to probably do is he's going to say to people, let's all sit down and figure this thing out and make it work for the next time or some other time in the future, maybe before the contract ends, maybe not. But in any of that, that's probably what's going to happen, because no arbitrator is going to ultimately rule, yes, union, you win, but you win a penny. It doesn't make any sense.
if you'd like to look over the actual supplemental information, I can get that for you.
Thank you, I think I'm just gonna look at these numbers first.
Sure.
So what I'm looking at now is just looking at the 6 weeks that were given and looking at, or I should say each paper, and looking at how many were given to lieutenant versus how many were given to everybody else. And then just trying to get a number for each. I think that's the only way to do it in the 6 week cycle. But then you would have to look at, so that's where it gets confusing, because then you have to look at each officer and what each officer picked up and how many they were given versus the lieutenant.
You have to look at what they
Versus,
write again. Compared to, some didn't want some certain days, not anything like that.
right, because they may pass on a lot,
They may pass on
depending
it.
on what they had going on, so
Right.
if the lieutenant is next in line and he takes them, then that detail is coming. Right, because there might
Yeah.
be somebody that doesn't want the overtime, so they'll pass and pass and pass, so it ends up going back to the same person.
Right. It's the overtime.
We're not saying it's not bad, we're not saying that at all, but what the town asked for was the lieutenant to be on the detail list. That's what we thought we were getting.
Could I also be first? And so some of your assignments, that's okay, you guys know the time. It's assignments. I think the first page, a lot of that is definitions and wording.
Okay.
On the last section, I think was of specific instances that
There seems to be a lot of contradiction to me in this, being if it's accepted in the contract. But that's enough, so during contract negotiations, they accepted it. Right?
They accepted it as written. The question is how it's being interpreted, as stated. Because when these negotiations occurred, there was only one list. So it says a detailed call list, but there was only ever one list when we negotiated this contract. In the past, there was two lists. So they interpret it as we are going back to the two lists, one being detail list, call list, one being overtime, because that's how it was in the past. And we stated on the contract, 8 detailed call lists, not the list, I guess, is what they're saying.
Just to clarify, past it. Well,
Okay.
2000, well, for the full time and 2016 in the part time, single list as well.
That's, as I read as Attorney Collins read the police lieutenant's contract with the addendum, says full-time rotation for overtime and details after all eligible members have been asked. So to me, that reads he's at the bottom of the list every single time,
I would have to agree.
which means that he should not be in the rotation. He should be at the bottom of the list every single time. That's what the addendum says. I don't know. Would that be a correct? That's how I interpret his contract.
I think that's a clear reading of his contract. That's right.
Okay. So when he goes on this one list, he's at the bottom every single time. That means everyone else gets first dibs every single time.
Well, as I said, the difference is that his contract is the minimum he has to get from the town's point of view. They think they negotiated a contract that put him in a better position, quite frankly, than what his contract required. Okay, that's the difference. So if you take the lieutenant's contract and say, look, it doesn't affect us because right now we're not taking anything away from him. So the lieutenant's contract is not binding at the moment. It's the union contract, and the union contract is the one the chief is administering. Okay, so whatever the result is, if your board says we're still going to, even though we don't have to, we're going to rely on the lieutenant's contract, that's your decision. Or no, we're going to read the contract the way it's written and the way it was negotiated, and the way it was signed. And sorry, Lieutenant, that that you got more than what you had to be getting. And sorry, union, you didn't know exactly maybe what you were signing. You made a mistake on all that. So either decision on your part is legally okay.
And it clearly states a detailed call list.
What was?
It says a detailed call list. Doesn't say one list anywhere. It just says a detailed call list. So that's where the interpretation comes in, was because it's been one list since 2012 for full-timers and 2016 for part-timers, it's to assume that a detailed call list is the one list for overtime and detail is the way it's been interpreted.
If the board is so inclined, oftentimes we'd have a quick talk that's before you made a vote, ask the union to leave for a couple of minutes, so we have private conversation, and then we just talk with the chief and the town administrator and ourselves, and then bring the union back in. If they're willing to do that, probably not a bad use of 5 minutes.
Yes, but just if I can,
To address the chair.
I'm sorry.
No, that's
The only thing that we would say that would think about that is that there's, in 2012, 2015, there was never a non-union member on the list. We were a non-union member on the list, which changed all. So to go back to 2012 and 2016 is a waste of everybody's time. We now have a non-union member on a union contract list. That's the issue. It's not about 2012, it's not about 2016, it's not about, let's do it. It's about a non-union member on a union list that we agreed to, but we agreed with the just the details.
okay. Thank you.
You'd like us to leave?
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. I mean, I think that's everyone besides the chief and Chris.
Jack,
Yeah,
are we
I-
going into? Jack, this
I
is
don't
Chris.
see what I hear. Go ahead.
Are you going into executive session?
That's what I'm just gonna, that's what I'm asking
Yeah,
right now.
because you can't just ask us to leave the room, Jack, without going into executive session. And then you can't go into executive session under the open meeting law without saying you're gonna go into executive session before the meeting, so that people will know that there's gonna be an executive session. So this is violating the open meeting law on several different levels. Sorry, but it is.
We haven't gotten there yet.
What I said was, with the union's permission, if they'd be willing to let us do this, that'd be fine. It's not executive session. Apparently, nobody's posted it for that, from what I understand. That's fine, okay? Could have been, because it obviously qualifies for that. But if it wasn't posted as executive session, and the union has a right to say, no, we won't leave the room. But I'm trying to figure a way to solve this thing here, so I'm saying as a courtesy, if you won't mind leaving the room, we'll try to come up with a solution. If that doesn't work for you, stay in the room.
Well, I think that the practical thing is that the council could take it under, the select board would take it under advisement, have a conversation and close the meeting if you want to do that. But to have us stand outside when it's 94 degrees while you have a chat, it's unfair. So, I mean, it's unfair and it's unhealthy and it's inappropriate, frankly.
So we go.
Sorry,
Exactly. 5 minutes, if that's a problem, close the session. We'll meet some other time, we'll talk some other time, and we'll, give the union an answer some other time. That's not a problem. I've never found a union to be this discourteous, but that's their business.
No, that's fine. You just have to post it as another executive session and discuss this, unless you do it some other avenue. You close this hearing under the open meeting law. And then have it, as long as the select board says they're gonna take this under advisement. And then if they would be inclined to tell us when they'll have a decision, we can live with that. Otherwise, there's no, we're not gonna just leave the room, so let's stand outside while you have a chat. It's not fair, it's not appropriate.
I think Attorney Collins, in fairness to the other member who's not here, who was also part of the original negotiations, I think we should table this until we're able to have an executive session with the other member as well.
A lot of sense, that's fine. For whatever it's worth in this kind of case here, we're closing the hearing. We're going to take it under advisement. We'll have an executive session in the next 2 weeks or whatever it might be, and we'll give the union an answer after that. That's the way they want to do it. That's fine.
Madam Chair, or you want to do it at your next meeting on the 29th? But you mentioned you are going away on vacation.
I'm on vacation next week if the other board members cannot meet this week. for an executive session, which Glenn isn't here to ask at the moment, we can do it on July 29th. Executive session. And then following that executive session, give them our answer. Will the answer have to be an open meeting? Obviously, at our following.
Well, you can obviously discuss strategy regarding collective bargaining or conduct collective bargaining. You could have done tonight in the executive session if you wanted to. So what you'll do is in your executive session, we'll come to some decision. Then you'll close the executive session, come out and give the union your answer. That's fine.
That same night.
Sure, if you want to, if you're ready to.
Yeah, I think we're gonna do that.
Just a point of order, Madam Chair, we'll be in the discussion on the agenda.
It will be on
After the executive session.
Yes, okay. And you should be giving them an invitation to come back with their answer. So we'll have to schedule that after our executive session. So executive session, do you want to start off with it at 5:31? On the 29th? Or 6 o'clock?
Probably the best thing to do.
And then 6 o'clock, have them here. It's just about a half hour. Glenn will watch the meeting. So we'll know what's going on.
We can notify them of the time,
Okay.
once the board has an idea of how long you think the discussion is gonna take.
So, Attorney Collins, can you be present next 2 Mondays from now, July 29th at 31?
5:31, I just put in my calendar, so I put 5:30, but close enough. Okay, it's in my calendar right now.
Actually, Madam Chair, if you want, we can schedule 2 meetings. An executive session at 5:30 and then the regular meeting at 6 or 6:50. And that way there's 2 individual meetings. And we don't have to worry about the camera having to shut down or leave or suddenly. That would probably be the better way to do it.
Thank you.
Or do like 5:30 and 6:30. That way, if we only take a half hour, it still gives camera half hour to set up. Like it normally takes them up every meeting.
Yeah, we'll do that. So
Okay.
5:30 for executive session next week, or sorry, Monday, July 29th. And then 6:30 with you guys.
Will be regular session.
It'll be regular session, and we'll just put them on as our first appointment.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
You all set with me?
I do believe so. Thank you so much.
Thanks for your time. Sorry with this vote resolved. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Chris, did you have any other business that you wanted to discuss before we move on to any business?
Reports.
I will second that motion. Any further discussion? Did actually have questions. Chris, on the, fire, actually, Chief O'Collins, you, or O'Neill, my God, O'Collins, O'Neill, you are here. For the actively looking for call members to help with increased call volume for both the fire and EMS, is that for part-time positions or full-time? Right, and I know, Chris, as I'm looking at Chief O'Neill, I know he was supposed to be put on the agenda and wasn't, so do we want to, after departmental reports, I'll have him come up? So that way you don't have to be here forever tonight. All right, I did notice that Dave DeRocher did do West Street Cemetery.
Yes.
So is he still in the process of it, or did he finish it?
It's complete.
Awesome. I haven't been there yet, so I want to go check it out, but he said he saved a lot of money by doing it in-house, which is really good. All right. And I think those were it for questions. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, so Chief O'Neill, why don't you come up, please? Thank you. Thank you for coming in today. So we just wanted to do a check-in on the budget.
Okay.
So
So you want projections of what 25 budget is gonna look like, or the current budget?
Yeah.
So as of right now, we still have an injured firefighter. So we have a provisional position still, so we will most likely go over on wages. And then overtime, it's hard to tell if we will go over on overtime, just because it's the beginning of the fiscal year. As for the per diem, wages, we most likely will go over on those. As this week alone, we have 4 shifts out of the 7 days week that are covered by per diem members, because no full timers bid at the overtime. So to make sure the ambulance stayed in service, the per diems picked up those hours, which is great because we're not paying the overtime rate, but it's also not calculated into the per diem rate for coverage.
So it could be a minute higher than
No, per diem, it's lower, but when I do out the shifts, there's only a minimal amount of fluff, as you call it, or overage. So we most likely will go over because they're covering the shifts, and we're only 8 days into the new fiscal year. Which, again, that's very hard to budget for when I don't know who's going to take vacation, who's going to be out sick, who's going to take comp time. And also not knowing that a full timer is not going to bid at overtime and overtime shift. Again, at one point you're saving money because you're not paying the overtime, but at the next you're expending a per diem line item that isn't really made to be covered by that many shifts.
So it's good. Not gonna go on to overtime, but you're still paying for the person called out, right? Is that what you're saying? When you have 4 years.
Yeah, so I'm using now instead of so right now how we operate is there's 4 full-time paramedics that work 24-hour shifts. So how they pace out is a full-timer is on, then they're off, then they're on, then they're off, and then they have 5 days off. That covers a 7-day rotation. So once they call out and we're not at the paramedic level, we have to be at the paramedic level per the state and per our OEMS contract. So by taking a per diem medic, we fill that position. And in order to be in service, we need to have 2 full-time or 2 members on the ambulance. Now, one has to be a paramedic. The other one can be either a paramedic or an EMT basic. And I do, as much as I can, fill in shifts during the day, during the week, when there is a need for them to stay in service, which obviously I'm paid on salary, so that doesn't.
So for the most part, you try at least one paramedic and one EMT.
Yes. Fine. Yeah.
If you don't have an EMT, then you have to.
Right.
Because there has to be 2 people.
There has to be 2 people. In either way, it has to be 2 people. So 1, yes.
Which
1.
you'll pay more.
Yeah. Which is fine. We're budgeted for that. I'm at the highest rate, which is the paramedic rate. So when we fill with an EMT basic, it's $3 difference, less than what the paramedic makes. So that's kind of, again, a little bit of catch up every once in a while when there's someone.
So it's the per diem hours that aren't budgeted for?
They're not the extended hours that they budgeted for the a year. A little bit, I couldn't give you the exact figure.
Can you talk a little bit more about what the extended hours are? What do you mean by that?
So we're covered to have a paramedic every night. That's per diem. By giving them the shifts that the overtime didn't take, those are I want to call an extended hours. So they're taking shifts that didn't.
That the full timers didn't take it.
Yes,
Okay.
right. Because per their contract, they get first all shift overtime.
So I guess my question would be then, if you're budgeted for one paramedic overnight, and then you need two people in the ambulance, so who's that other, so if that person calls out, you're now calling in a per diem that's taking that shift?
If the full timer
Yep.
calls out, it goes to overtime first. If no overtime takes it, then it goes to the per diem paramedic.
Okay.
Now, if it's we have two full-time basics, one which is provisional and one is a permanent full-time position. If they call out, it still goes to overtime, but filling with a basic is a lot easier than filling with a paramedic, just because there's a shortage, not just in Granby, but nationwide.
So then for fiscal year 20, we're in fiscal year 2025 now, so for fiscal year 2026.
We're gonna budget
Yeah,
at the
budget
true operating
per
cost of what it, yes, so the true operating cost of what it costs to run the fire department.
And the per diem is the line item that is under budgeted right now?
For the extra shifts, yes. For normal day-to-day operations, it's budgeted where it should be, with a little bit of, again, a little bit of extra just to a couple hours here, a couple hours there, but not for the amount of hours that I foresee them taking. The other thing is I've already denied 4 full-timer vacation time in the first week and a half because we don't have the personnel. Like we could have 100 per diem paramedics and EMTs, but if they all work their other jobs and they can't come to us, we can't fill their shifts. So then I have to deny the full timers. So the 4 full-time medics are the ones running the ambulance service and keeping it afloat, per se. With the per diems helping, which they do help tremendously, but at certain times, like this time of year, is hard because there's a ton of overtime in their full-time departments or their other jobs. So they're gonna go where there's more money than what we're offering. It's pretty much a balancing act is what we're trying to do for staffing.
The little pool.
Yeah. And our call volume is only going up just like everyone around us. So, right now, those are the proceed. Right now, I can tell you that's the proceed. What I believe is going to go over right now depends. If we keep on tracking like we are, we're going to hit 400 plus fire calls. So it depends on how many call members come back. Depends on how much we pay out in that line item for part-time fire response. So unfortunately, it's a very fluid topic and subject.
And it's hard too, because you don't want to deny them vacation time all the time because they're going to get burnt out.
Right. So burnout is a huge concern for my full timers and my call staff. That's why we're actively always looking for call members.
Now, the rate at which we pay them is comparable to other districts.
Mhm.
It's just that they work full-time for their district.
Yeah.
So they don't- and they're paid more, and therefore don't compare for you.
Mhm. Or there's. Fixed. Luckily, into two, they've been. But be a problem down the road. Yes, but at that tone, it's for we. So it's sick life support level either. They're happy, but we have, it's better than going out of service completely.
So at that point, you almost make it mandatory that somebody needs to.
They have to, they get four, yes.
Was that working already on the 24-hour shift, so then we go on a 48-hour shift?
Unfortunately, two this year already, but that's all that there is. So.
Chris, so we know that we're gonna go over budget. Where will that come from? We'll have to have a town meeting, right? Or during the annual town meeting and pay for it. And pull it out of where we pulled it last year.
Wherever. We'd have to figure that out at that point.
Okay. And all the other, departments do a 24-hour shift too? Is that like standard?
It's to reduce the burnout. So.
So when they're not on call, they're sleeping.
No, they're station duties.
So 24 hours?
No. Sleep, but
Okay. I'm
during
like,
working
24
hours, they're not just sitting there, not doing anything. They're doing station chores and doing apparatus checks and making sure everything's ready to go. Yeah, restocking. But yes, they do get sleep. They also get woken up at all hours of the night to go out and call. So yeah.
Well, thank you for the update. I don't know how to stop from going over budget.
Stop the meeting, right?
Yeah.
Do you have any suggestions of how to stop the meeting on that?
We need to hire more full-time staff, but we also need to keep per diem staff. So we're at this very fragile state where even if we hired 2 more full-timers, we still need to have the per diem staff and on-call staff. To ever go away from that, we would need to hire 20 more full-timers to make 26, and then you could get rid of all the per diems and part-time on-call members, but it would just be a strictly full-time, but you would then pay overtime for them to come back for callback. So, which would cost, yeah. Mhm. So like right now, any call member that doesn't come back for a fire call or an emergency call minus the ambulance, there's no pay going out to them. But once they come back, they get paid. But we're also going over a little bit because when I first got here, we only had 1 person or 2 people show up and we relied strictly on mutual aid, which we can't do. Now we have an average about 7 people coming back per fire call. And during the day, we're still very light because everyone has full-time jobs unless they're a full-time firefighter with us. So that's another increase in cost because there was no one coming back and that poor group of people coming back, which is great, and get the town the service that they're paying for and that they deserve. And they're not fire company to come to your house. And it's also the same with the ambulance. we're staffing the ambulance and not going out of service as many times as we did over a 3-year period, and you're getting the service. And we're able to utilize some of these callback personnel to take secondary medical calls that help with offsetting us losing other departments. Because every time a mutual aid ambulance comes in and we don't have a paramedic on that ambulance, we lose that billable income. When we do have a, today we saw in our ambulance intercept, we 475 on the on-duty crew in that ambulance, where originally we would have just
How much does a paramedic take in
it depends on what step they're at.
the tiered system?
Tier system, yep, 10 steps.
What's the lowest? Do you even know that? Just have to-
So right now I can tell you that I have 2 that are at $76,000.
That's not step one, though, right?
No, that's not step 1. So none of my medics are at step 1. All my medics are 5 or above.
Most of them are close to 10.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, yes. Which I believe is about $40 an hour.
And I know you're gonna know this, but that's annually.
It's about 80,000.
And that's without any OT or anything. So if we were to help with the, how much, I gotta think how much we went over last year. I don't have the article in front of me now. No, that was with one article, but there was
We're at
We're about 210,000 combined.
210,000 open. So
Combined.
if we get 2 paramedics that still say they're around step 10, that's 160,000 a year. So that would alleviate some of it, and it would also alleviate.
But that's not guaranteeing he's not gonna go over on overtime shifts and
Right.
other things. Because he's still, even with 2 people, the issue becomes is he still needs per diems that he hasn't budgeted for. And he still needs to
Okay.
cover for people taking time off that he hasn't budgeted for.
the
Okay?
per diems though, the budget would work if they weren't taking the extra shifts that aren't. Because if we added 2, which we're not going to get 2 more full-time paramedics, they're just not out there in the cards, unless we were lucky and we have someone come that's already full-time. But that would help and would have to change the contract, which I know I'm talking contractual stuff, but if you had 2 on shift at all times, if one went out, you could fill that with money that's right now, like I'm saying, there's only 4 paramedics. If we could add 2 more paramedics, it would help. It's a balancing act.
But there's no guarantee that you're still not paying as much overtime or more,
No,
depending
right.
on the time they take off.
If you add 2 more, any time you add 2 more personnel, you're gonna have overtime. Not a ton, but you're gonna people that have vacation time and are allowed to take time off.
The option to potentially look at is if you can run the units with 1 paramedic and 1 basic. You could potentially save money that way. Because the basic is less than what the paramedics are getting.
So if we had 2 full base.
And link them with a paramedic over the 24 hours a day. That is a way to cut some of your deficit.
So they're roughly $3 less an hour. Are they?
The per diems are not,
Oh, okay.
not the full-time
Okay.
886. There will be a cost savings, like
Yeah.
Chris said. Some could be more, some could be less, but eventually as they climb up.
But they
into
have
the
a group
steps
system as well. Steps.
for,
Basic.
yes.
Okay. So before we can even think about that, we have to figure out where the money's coming from. So we can't just say, hey, we're gonna give you, we think it's a great idea, hire 2 basic, EMTs, but where's the money gonna come from? And we just expended all of our money for fiscal year 2020.
If you want, you could fund it through a stabilization fund.
But it would be a special town meeting, right? Or we'd have to ask the,
Ask permission. And that will require a 2/3 vote to vote it out of the stabilization.
and if I remember correctly, Chris, the special town meeting is 2,000?
Well, 2 to 3, yeah.
I think, we should definitely discuss this at our next meeting with, Mr. Sexton. And see, what he thinks as well, but I think if that's gonna alleviate some of the bleeding, so to speak, I think that would be the way to go. But again, we would have to ask the town for permission first. I need to be able to do that. Hopefully that will alleviate some of it. You know, that's not gonna give them their vacation time, right? Because we need a paramedic on at all times.
Right, and I mean,
But it leaves a little leeway if they're paired up with a basic.
mhm.
But if you're using per diems, you can let your full-time go on vacation, knowing you have a per diem paramedic
Yeah.
to take over that spot along with
the
the
basic.
basic.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Either way, it seems like a give and take.
Yeah.
Because you're pulling somebody in from the outside
Yeah.
and paying the overtime either way.
Yeah, it's give or take. Obviously, the per diem's less. So it just, some of that does get gray because of their contract. So that's the only other caveat.
You mean with the basic or just with the?
No,
per
just with the
diems?
first right of
Okay.
refusal for overtime. Like if it's a shift overtime right now, per their contract, they get first right of refusal to that.
Okay.
So yes, is it working great right now? And yes, we can, like, we're filling with per diems right now because no one wanted the overtime. But if they start, I hate to use the word hungry, but if they want to have overtime, they're
Yeah.
allowed to have it. So sorry that I can't answer it fully, but
I understand it a lot better than I did before this meeting, so thank you for coming in. And we'll discuss it with Glenn at our next meeting and we'll see. Well, make a decision and go from there.
okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
All right, so next on the agenda is approve and sign maintenance warrants.
Okay. Town of Granby authorization for payments, warrant number 0076 dated 6/14/2024. Total disbursement on warrant 0076, we have $350,817.98.
That is your motion, and I will second that motion. Any further discussion at this time? Chris, I had one question on this one, the Peckham Industries Incorporated,
Yep,
what was that for?
that's all the asphalt they put down.
Okay. At West Street, right? Well, yeah, East Street, I think it said, right?
Yes.
Okay.
He's been doing a lot of paving around town.
Yeah.
And that's basically for the company to come in and do the paving.
And then what is the South Hadley Fire District 2 tax title?
Basically, just like we do, we have people who do not pay their taxes on time, and they get placed into tax title, or we basically put a lien on their property. There are South Hadley Fire District 2 taxes that are levied through the town of Granby. And if they don't pay those, that gets levied also into tax title. When payment is made, we have to pay them to South Hadley District.
Okay.
So in essence, someone paid their back taxes. Some of it was belonged to South Hadley District 2, so we had to pay this.
And the voided checks were just not supposed to go to those people? There's 2 voided checks on here.
Two voided checks totaling $566.76.
Just trying to think. One, it was, yes, it went to the wrong person.
Okay.
And the other one, I believe, was an overpayment that we had to void out, that they sent the check back.
All right. No further questions? Okay, all in favor? Aye. There's signatures.
Yeah, make a motion for town of Granby authorization for payments dated 6/14/2024, warrant number 076S. For a total disbursement of $269,956.75.
I will second that motion. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Seven success. No, there should be 2 in there.
Next warrant, I make a motion, town of Granby authorized for payment dated 6/21/24, warrant number 78. Total disbursement for warrant number 78, $261,469.96.
I will second that motion. Any further discussion?
None.
All in favor? Aye. We should have two of those. Might be underneath, I see my green paper, but 78.
Make a motion for payroll account summary for the town of Granby, warrant number 77, dated 6/18/2024. For a total of $694,938.60.
I will second that motion. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. And I will not be abstaining from the select board or teacher salaries out of necessity. Thank you. All right, so we don't have any minutes this time. But we should have a bunch of them on July 29th. So next is to affirm the 2025 appointments. I have the sheet that Kathy gave us and she color coded it for us. Chris, I don't see what this could be. Or did you get that from the police? I don't see the one day liquor license that's on here. Let me see. Never mind. It's under the menu paperwork. Do you want these? That the police?
We'll send copies to the. Actually, do you want me to send the copies to all your?
Yeah, because we're gonna give it to you. Because they only gave us one copy.
All right.
So yeah, I don't have the one day liquor license in here, Chris. I just have the Brotherhood. Let me just make sure I don't go into the poll hearing.
That's it.
Okay. Nope, never mind.
We have.
You got it.
Sorry.
We got it.
Okay, the town of Granby, senior centers, 10 West Street, Granby, Mass. Make a motion for a 1-day special alcohol permit, fee of $100. Special license for alcoholic beverages for a nonprofit organization only. Special license for wine and malt, date of event 7/20/24. Responsible manager Avery Lee Battles. Organization name Paragus Strategic IT. Address of 112 Russell Street, Hadley, Mass. 01035. Telephone number 413-370-4965. With a description of event for an annual company picnic for our staff and families taking place at Dufresne Park with 40 to 60 participants. Alcoholic beverages are being purchased from Horizon Beverage. The quantity of alcohol being purchased will be 3 cases of beer, 72 total, 2 cases of seltzer, 24 total, and 2 bottles of wine. Start time will be 10:30 a.m. and end at 3:30 p.m.
Right, so I will second that motion.
Can I make a suggestion
Yes,
that it is a special 1-day wine and malt license?
instead of alcohol.
It's not an alcohol license, it's a wine and malt.
It does say wine and malt, but I read it as alcohol.
Okay, so I just saying.
And Chief, do you have any suggestions or objections or anything?
Pretty sure that's not any of all of those.
Okay,
Yeah, they've been here before.
Doesn't say.
right, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. There should be a place for you to sign something around there.
Liability insurance for that?
Want us just to sign and date the side of it?
Um,
Or we don't have to, right? Because you're gonna print, Kathy's gonna print out the other one and then we'll sign that at the next. All right, so we kind of did that a little out of order because you found the 1-day liquor license, but that's okay. So we're gonna go back to affirming 2025 appointments. So usually what we do is we say what the committee or group is or fund. You say the person's name and for how long their term is. Did you have your?
I don't.
Okay. It was in the last meeting, so it might be in that folder. Thank you. There,
Oh, there it is.
You have it?
yep, he's got one. And so before we start, Chris, all the people have been contacted and she has the ones in red as the ones, I don't know if she gave you the same copy we have, but I believe the ones in red are the ones that are returning. The ones that are not in red, we don't know for sure, so are we, or they haven't,
I would have.
okay, and then they'll let us know.
When they get the card, they'll reject it at that point.
Okay. Perfect.
I'm sorry, so go through and read.
I would do each fund or each committee and then state the names and for their term. So this would be, yep, for the fiscal year 2025. So Chris, do you want him to say June with an expiration date of June 30th, or can we just say for 2025 fiscal year? So I think you guys have me do till June 30th of that year.
We usually give an actual date certain.
Okay, so June 30th of
Because a lot of
2020.
people don't know what our fiscal year is.
Right, that's true. Because, you know, the calendar year is January, so a lot of people think it's January to December, but it's not.
Well, federal government is September.
Oh, that's true. All right, so June 30th, for all of them, depending, no matter the year.
And you can just make that statement at the beginning of the appointments that that the ending date will be June 30th of the year read. That way you don't have to keep reading it. Because he'll need probably another couple of waters if he has to do that, right? You know what that's like, Crystal.
Okay, so I make a motion to accept the board members'
Appointments.
appointments for the following boards with an expiration date of June 30th, 2025, unless otherwise stated by year.
Yep.
First on this list is Almoners Whiting Street Fund. Members are Diane Berry, Barbara Hochschild, and Brenda Wishart, all expiring in 2025.
I will second that motion. Any further discussion?
None?
All in favor?
Aye. Second is American with Disabilities Act Committee, Jennifer Crosby and Christopher Martin, expiring June 30th, 2025.
I will second that motion. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Animal Control Officer Kimberly Bernier Goldsmith,
I will second that motion for expiring June 30th, 2025.
2025. Correct. Yes.
Any further discussion?
No?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Board of Appeals, Steve Nally, expiring June 30th, 2027. Jeremy Carrier, expiring June 30th, 2025. Ronald Harrop, June 30th, 2025. Kathleen Bronner, June 30th, 2026. Ryan Tronke, June 30th, 2026.
I will second that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oh, I should have said any further discussion. I apologize. It's okay.
Almost, it's with the name in place, right? Building Department, Damian Cody, expiring June 30th, 2025.
I will second that motion. Any further discussion?
No?
All in favor?
Aye. Cable TV Advisory Committee, David Johnson, June 30th, 2025 expiration.
I will second that motion. Chris, I had a question. Didn't we have attorney August doing it because we didn't have an advisory committee for the cable TV?
No.
Okay,
Because he was our attorney at the last one.
okay.
And he specializes actually in cable contracts, so
Okay,
we decided to go with the same one, seeing that we already knew what the contract read. And he'd be one up on bringing someone else.
so can we have a committee of one person? I thought we had to have three.
Well, it's usually nice to have three, but I
Okay.
guess if you wanted to, you could have a committee of one
Okay,
and keep searching for additional members.
okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Capital Improvement Planning Committee, Joseph Erdick, Rob Chauvin Jr., Charles Mayhew, Thomas Russo, Jeffrey Rule, expiring June 30th, 2025.
I will second that motion. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Charter Day Committee, Brian Carillon, Sue DeSalmier, Martin Liberty, and Glenn Sexton, expiring June 30th, 2025.
I will second that motion. Chris, didn't Kathy say there was 4 other people that wanted to sign up that called her? The Charter Day Committee.
I think there was at least 2 that I know of.
Okay, so they'll be coming forward on the next one? Okay.
And they would call Kathy if they want to get on, because I had a couple of people approach me.
Please, yes.
Okay, Kathy. Very good.
And we can put them on it effective the next meeting.
Okay.
And the number is 413-467-7177. Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Chief Procurement Officer Christopher F. Martin, expiring June 30th, 2025.
I will second that motion. Any further discussion?
No discussion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Commissioner of Trust Funds, Diane Morgan, Barbara Hoschild and Kathy Leonard, all expiring June 30th, 2025.
I will second that motion. Any further discussion?
Discussion?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Conservation Commission. David Deslets, expiring June 30, 2025. William Shaheen, Kevin Shoemaker, Amanda Smith, Associate Member. Oh, I'm sorry. Sheehan and Shoemaker are expiring June 30th, 2027. Amanda Smith, Associate Member, expiring June 30th, 2025. Edward Chapdelaine, June 30th, 2025.
I second that motion. Any further discussion?
Any discussion?
All in favor? Aye.
Constables, Louis Berry, Mark Johnson, and Kathy Leonard, all expiring June 30th, 2025.
I second that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No discussion.
No dis-
Council on Aging Advisory Board. Ann Butop, Lillian Camus, Janet Montemagny, Eleanor White, all expiring June 30th, 2027. In addition to Barbara Hoschild, Joyce Polverini, Robert Camus, and Teresa Johnson. Hoschild, Polverini expiring 2025, June 30th, and Camus and Johnson expiring 2026, June 30th.
Second that motion. Any further discussion?
No discussion?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Think more on that one.
Oh, there's one.
Nope, that's okay.
Two more on that.
Mm.
Carol Morissette and Carol Zabrowski, also Council on Aging Advisory Board, and expiring June 30th, 2026. Also Stephanie Pratt, an associate non-voting member, expiring June 30th, 2025.
I second that. No further discussion?
No discussion?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Electrical inspectors, Arthur Crushane Jr., Bruce Pelletier, assistant, and Richard Grosaza, assistant, expiring June 30th, 2025.
Second that motion. Any further discussion?
No discussion?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Emergency Management Director, Kevin O'Grady, and Assistant Director, Christopher Martin, is that correct? She hasn't-
Yeah, I think Kevin O'Grady is the director.
Okay, that's the way she hasn't switched up. Expiring June 30th, 2025.
Second that motion. Any further discussion?
Discussion?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Ethics Commission Liaison, Kathy Leonard, expiring June 30th, 2025.
I second that motion. Any further discussion?
No discussion?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Finance Committee, Jennifer Mallett, expiring June 30th, 2027. Joe Fernia and Scott Wilson, expiring June 30th, 2025. Robert Glessman III and John J. Liberia Jr., expiring 2026, June 30th.
Second that motion. All in favor, or sorry, any further discussion?
No discussion?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Fire and Ambulance Department, Fire Chief Michael P. O'Neill, expiring June 30, 2025.
Second that motion. Any further discussion?
Any discussion?
All in favor? Aye. So just, I would just say for, like you're doing now for the fire and ambulance department, full-time and call force fire ambulance, all of these are expiring 2020.
All of them.
So then you don't have to say the date and you're just saying the names.
So all the further names will be expiring June 30, 2025 for full-time fire and call force fire ambulance. Benjamin E. Fisher, EMT. Aaron Kurt David, EMT, Michael Pelletier, firefighter, EMT, Maria Permakoff, thank you, firefighter, EMT.
Can I ask a question?
Mhm.
Is it just saying EMT or is it saying EMTP?
P.
P,
You have to say that because that's a paramedic.
Okay.
okay, apologies.
No, I'm just asking the question, that's all.
Yeah.
Whereas B is basic, right?
And B is basic,
Okay.
yes, that's it, just to make that distinction, so,
Okay,
so,
very good.
so we know what we're saying.
Moving forward, very
Okay.
good. Micheline Turgeon, firefighter, paramedic. Tyler Yvonne, lieutenant, firefighter, paramedic. In the call force fire ambulance category, we have Marissa Bailey, firefighter, EMTB. Roger Bancroft, firefighter. Kevin Benson, firefighter, EMT, paramedic. Edward Chapdelaine, firefighter. Ryan Sear, firefighter, EMTB. Zach Sear, EMT, basic. Hannah Einstein, EMT, paramedic. Jonathan Delgado, firefighter. Joseph Fernandez, firefighter, EMT, basic. Nicole Dorefi, firefighter, EMT, basic. Alan Hodges, firefighter, EMT, paramedic. Miranda Govia, firefighter, EMT, basic. Stephen Leopopoulos, firefighter. Alan Leone, firefighter, EMT, basic. Scott Libby, firefighter. Robert Libizuski, firefighter. Nathaniel Massey, firefighter. Chance McLean, firefighter, EMT, basic. Holly Mullane, firefighter, EMT, basic. Matthew Niles, firefighter, EMT, paramedic. Darren O'Reilly, firefighter, EMT, paramedic. Austin Plant, firefighter, EMT, paramedic. Josh Power, firefighter. Josh Rondo, firefighter, EMT, basic. Paige St. Pierre, firefighter, EMT, basic. Christopher Town, firefighter, EMT, basic. Raymond Warren, firefighter, EMT, basic. Taylor Warren, firefighter, EMT, Rachel Weisbrod, firefighter, EMT, basic. Brady Williams, firefighter.
I will second that motion. Any further discussion?
No discussion?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Chris, do you think we can split the pages? I know usually the chair doesn't make the motion, but just to help with the reading.
If you want to give them a break, yes.
Okay. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do the next four. And then, I'll make a motion for the next four and then we'll move on to the next four and we'll do it page by page. So we've got 4 more pages.
Quite a bit.
right.
Actually, if you want, read the whole page and then approve the page as written.
Okay, let's do that.
That way it'll go a little bit quicker.
Okay. So I will make a motion to approve Forest Warden Michael P. O'Neill. And remember, all of these are expiring June 30th of that year for 2025. Gas Inspector Fred Marion and Michael McCain for 2025. Granby Agricultural Commission, William Clark and Evelyn Hatch for 2027. Thomas Benson Jr., 2025. Lynn Galusha, 2026. And Russell
Arnhammer.
Arnhammer, 2026. For Granby Local Cultural Council, L. Laguerre and Terrence Schweden for 2025. Eleni Bauman, Joanne Daffia, Carolyn Dunlap Schneiding, Helen Hirsch,
Schneiding.
Schneid,
Scheidling.
Okay. Helen Hurtu and Anna Hannah Sinha
I don't remember.
for 2026.
I don't remember the name on that one. I'm
Okay.
trying to picture them as you're going through them.
All right, for Hampshire Insurance Advisory Committee, Christopher Martin for until 2025. Hazard Mitigation Committee is David DeRocher, Christopher Martin, James Trompe, Kevin O'Grady, and Michael P. O'Neill, all expire in 2025. Historical Commission is Ben Halley, Teresa LaJoy, and Cynthia Gaspari. It says she resigned. So it's just Ben Haley and Teresa LaJoy, expiring 2026. Historic District Commission, Catherine Morris, expiring 2027. Stephen Nally and William Johnson, alternate members, or Keys and alternate members, sorry, both expiring 2025. Land Review Committee is Glenn Sexton, William Shaheen, and James Tromke, all expiring 2025. Local Emergency Planning Committee is Michael P. O'Neill, David DeRocher, Lee Lalonde, Christopher Martin, Jeffrey McPherson, and Kevin O'Grady, all expiring 2025. And local licensing agents, all expiring 2025, are Alan Brooks, Earl Brown, Kurt Carpenter, Zachary Gilly, Kendall Hill Manning, Eric Jorgensen, Stephen Marion Sargent, Gary Polar Lieutenant, Jason Richard Sargent, Ryan Senecal, James White, and Kevin O'Grady, Chief. So that is my motion.
I second the motion.
All in favor? Oh, sorry, any further discussion?
All discussion.
All in favor? Aye.
Municipal Hearing Officer, Christopher Martin, 2025. Space Committee, Crystal Dufresne, Dave Desilets, William Shaheen, James Tromke, Megan Slosik, Associate Member, expiring 2025. Parking Clerk, Damian Cody, Mark Johnson, Assistant to the Parking Clerk, William Johnson, Assistant to the Parking Clerk, expires 2025. Parks Oversight Ad Hoc Committee, Kathy Leonard, Megan Slozak, Nicholas Robinson, Tim Abbott, Jeremy Carrier, expiring 2025. Park Police, Alan Brooks, Earl Brown, Kurt Carpenter, Zachary Gilly, Kendall Hill Manning, Eric Jorgensen, Stephen Marion, Sergeant, Kevin O'Grady, Chief, Gary Pollard, Lieutenant, Jason Richard, Sergeant, Ryan Senecal, and James White, all expiring 2025. Personnel Board, Rob Chauvin Jr., expiring 2027. Albert Bale, expiring 2025. Jeffrey Rule, 2027. Brian Hochschild, 2025. Glenn Durham, 2026. Wayne Wilson, 2026. Christopher Martin, ex officio, 2025. Dennis LaFleur, associate member, 2025. Pioneer Valley Planning Commission representative is Nita Abbott. No alternate. Or is she the alternate?
No,
That's
there's,
strange to read.
oh, no, there's no alternate.
There is no alternate. Okay. Expires 2025. PVPC Joint Transportation Committee, Dave DeRocher, expires 2025. Police and Dispatch Department, Chief of Police, Kevin O'Grady, expires 2027. Part-time officers, Brian Bartholet, Ian Howard, and Jeffrey L. Reed, expiring 2025.
I will second that motion. Any further discussion?
No discussion?
I think, Chris, just for Nicholas Robinson, under the Parks Oversight Ad Hoc Committee, his last name was spelled wrong, that's all. It's Robin.
Yeah.
Okay,
You point these out and every now and then Kathy misses them. It's okay.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, so I'll make a motion to appoint the full-time officers, Alan Brooks, Earl Brown, Kurt Carpenter, Zachary Gilly, Kendall Hill Manning, Eric Jorgensen, Stephen Marion Sergeant, Kevin O'Grady Chief, Gary Puller Lieutenant, Jason Richard Sergeant, Ryan Senical, and James White, all expiring 2026. Police matron is Lori Hebert and Marissa Bailey, expiring 2025. Police dispatcher, clerk, and matron as Linda Menard, expiring 2026. Police dispatcher is John Ferretier,
There, yeah.
Ferreter, Jeffrey Lawson, and Lee Surratt, expiring 2026. Police advisory committee, Annette, and I do this every year, Chris, Amiga, okay. William E. Johnson, Scott Merrill, Lynn Snowpeck Mercier, Wayne Wilson, and Zachary Gilly as a non-voting member, expiring 2025. Public Safety Liaison is Kevin O'Grady Chief, 2025. Right to Know Coordinator, Jeremy Carrier for 2025. Sign Officer, Damian Cody, 2025. Stormwater Phase 2, Damon Cody, David DeRocher, Lee Lalonde, William Shaheen, and James Tromke, expiring 2025. Town Accountant, are we leaving that for now, Chris? Because we've appointed you until we can find a replacement. So do we appoint you until the replacement, or do we?
You suppose you have, but
So, did you use an initial in the other ones? I think you did. No, okay. So I will make, so part of this motion is town accountant is Christopher Martin. And this will be for the year 2025
until you find a
until we find a replacement.
I second that motion.
All right, town council, Brian O'Toole, expiring 2025. Town of Granby harassment officer, Kathy Leonard and Christopher Martin, 2025, expiring. Tree warden is Dave DeRocher, expiring 2025. Granby veterans agent, David Mendoza, expiring 2025. Veteran War Memorial Committee is Joshua Bouchard, Robert Chauvin Jr., Jason Richard, Jeffrey Rule, Thomas Roussel, Brian Sewell, and James Sewell, and Stephen Weatherby, all expiring 2025. Can I have a second?
Second motion,
Any further discussion?
discussion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I guess I could have finished off the page, huh?
Western Mass Regional Local Emergency, Christopher Martin, Michael P. O'Neill, expiring 2025. Westover Metropolitan Development Corporation, John Libera Jr., expires 2025. West Street Building Committee, Stephen Chinaki, Dale Clark, Lynn Mercier, Kevin O'Grady, Jennifer Silva, James Tromke, Micheline Turgeon, expiring 2025. And last but not least, Zoning Enforcement Officer Damian Cody, expiring 2025.
I will second that motion. Any further discussion?
No discussion?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you for taking some of that.
No problem. All right, so next, we did the town accountant already. We did Forge Pond. Open Space Committee, we're just waiting back to hear back from some of the committee members because we were supposed to schedule a meeting in August, early September with the hopes of having our community engagement meeting at Dino Fest on September 14th. And me and Dave Desilets are the only ones that have responded to the emails. So it's been about 2 weeks. So I will try and send a follow-up and see where we stand for that meeting. But the police chief sent out the red calls, and the superintendent at the school sent out all calls to the community. And we got a lot of responses from it and the yard signs. So I think the yard signs are still at the town property, but the school threw out the signs that we had there. Because they threw out my running signs for a event that I had when I was gonna reuse them and just redate them. So hopefully we won't need them. Cause they're gone now. But I will keep you guys updated as soon as I know of a date for a meeting for the open space. But our hopes is to have the community engagement meeting on September 14th during Dino Fest. We'll have a tent there. And then for green communities, I don't have an update on that. Okay. Hold harmless contracted.
What I'm gonna do is send you all a copy of the one DCR. And
Okay.
see if that's what the board wants to use for every language too. So,
Yeah, because they do a lot of volunteer work on the hiking trails.
right, so-
Okay.
And they are a municipality or
Yep.
a state agency, so they probably have other language holding harmless for actions. Part of volunteers.
Great.
Okay.
That's good.
All right. And West Street building project, did you guys?
They did meet with the two people who responded to the RFS. They did rank them. And actually, I had a phone call today with the top ranked one, and we are in the process of getting together an agreeable contract and the cost for them to perform this.
And nothing back from the state on the samples, right? They were clean?
I
Well, we
haven't heard anything on it, and I actually wrote to Western Mass Environmental asking if I could get a copy of the test results, and I haven't heard from them either, so
Okay.
give them another. See if they have.
Yeah, with the holiday last week, it might have slowed
Yeah.
them down a little bit. All right, and then Granby Greenhouse Gas Emissions Reduction Plan, that is something that we will have to decide if we want to move forward with as a community. I know, I think it was 2 meetings ago, right? It was presented to the board, but we haven't seen Glenn, so I want to do further discussion on that and see if that's something that we would want to do. The grants that they're offering is for community engagement. So it's not for municipalities to lower their greenhouse gas emissions. What they're pushing for is to educate community members on how to save money for their house. Like getting the energy audit and going forward with that.
Insulation.
Yeah. Yep. And the Veterans Flags update, I sent Chris some information today on that. It is quite a lengthy process, so I guess we have to decide if we want to move forward on it at this time because we have a lot of stuff going on and a lot of things moving. So Chris will be sending that to you and Glenn for review, and we can discuss it further at the next meeting on the 29th. All right, and then Mass DOT project.
Moving along.
Do you know who the project leader is there? 'Cause if we
There
do-
was an email I saw once.
Okay,
I'd have to go back and see if I can find.
I think they have their Mass DOT number posted on that telephone pole. It's like in magic marker on a piece of cardboard.
This, is that the DEP number?
It says Mass DOT on it.
Says DOT?
Yeah. So I'm thinking if, because I think there was somebody who told me that if you go to the Mass DOT website and you put in that number, all the project plans come up. So it can give us more of a time frame to see if we are, to see how much of a time crunch we're on with this water project, if we want to move forward with it, because we might not have time. I don't know how long it's going to take at Five Corners.
They gotta be close, because we got the additional lane already really with the base coat
On the Amherst Street.
pavement in. They got all the curving in.
Yep.
They've changed all the catch basin material. So I don't know how much more that they've put down the sidewalks. They've already put the sidewalks in.
And then we'll be if they do repave it completely, we're on a 5-year moratorium for that, right? So then we're essentially on, yeah. Because even if we get the 2 years, you could take the water up here to Pizza Palace, that's it, right?
It's around that area. It's,
Yeah,
you know,
and then that's in 2 years. So we'd have to do all the legwork and get it ready to apply for the grant. Okay.
Yeah.
It's a lot of moving pieces,
If they paved this year, then what's a 5-year?
but we
Moratorium
could
on
still
that
bring it
section.
down. Yeah. I was gonna say we can't, we can bring it down Pleasant Street, but then we have to stop. Because we can't rip up the road.
and I think that's too long of a stretch to bore.
Okay.
I know you can't, I know we bored under 202 in one area to put a sewer line in.
You mean go underneath the pavement?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't know how long of a stretch they can do that under. So,
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that. I mean, I'm familiar
Yeah,
with
but the-
boring, but I'm not.
how far it can go and things
Yeah.
of that nature, but I'm not sure either, so.
All right. And so still, I know we already said this earlier, Chris, but still no update for One Stop for Growth. So I don't think we got awarded the, like you said, I think
didn't
it's
hear
a,
anything back.
usually it's like, hey, you know, you want to go for this grant
Contact this
Yeah.
agency and no, I got nothing.
and we need this, this and this, but they.
Yeah.
All right, we'll have to do the legwork, I guess, and take it as far as we can. And then apply for the grant next year when it opens up again. And then the senior work-off program, Chris?
Starting it. That's all I
Okay.
can say. Getting all the stuff you had handed out before and putting it all together. Need to do.
Now do you guys have a PDF converter? Like when you get, okay, so at least you won't have to start off from scratch. You can kind of convert it over and then make it your own. Okay. All right, and then,
I'm not ashamed to say I plagiarized.
well, it's not plagiarizing, it's a borrowing.
Most communities plagiarize. We will say that up front.
Well,
Why
why?
reinvent the wheels?
Yeah.
Copy and paste. It sounds good.
All right, and I believe we're just waiting for Glenn to give his evaluation to Kathy. For the TA evaluation. And then municipal water and the MWRA project. Well, we talked to District 2 today about municipal water. So I think the next step is to call the engineer, but we'll have to find out, Chris, how much it's going to cost. And then where do we pull that money from? Because nobody's going to do a study for free.
Nope.
So would you be able to, actually, did they give you a copy of this?
Yes,
Okay.
I made sure I got one.
And the
before,
elevations, I know because I wrote all over mine, so I mean, I can give it to you, but it's gonna have all my chicken
No, I'm
scratch.
fine.
Okay, so maybe we can reach out to the engineer that we used the last time and just see what the cost would be for him to look at
Well,
this type of
I think,
project.
well, I think the problem is are we gonna have him be involved with the full design for the full 15,000?
Yeah, it was
feet?
15,000 feet.
Or are we just gonna pick a piece?
I think we should just do a phase. Because I don't know if we're gonna get the funding for all of it. He said at least 3.8 million.
Yeah.
I mean, we could try and go for the whole bulk of it, but don't you have to use it within that year? You have to expend it within that year unless, so otherwise we would just have to apply for it in phases.
Right. Looking at the way he has it laid out, you're all over the place. That number be a 1 year.
No,
Because you're going all the way down Pleasant, you're going down Karen Drive, you're going up Amherst Street. You know. Pleasant Street. You know, we now know the 202, you can only basically go to On here, it's almost where Granby Liquor Store is. Where he's got it identified.
Yeah, because of the moratorium that will be put on it,
Yep.
right? So if it's just doing the same study that was done the last time in 2 years, say there's a moratorium put on this and we're not able to get that cross in, because he was hoping that we could get that cross in right at Five Corners here, where we could at least lay the pipe down underneath before they pave. That was his hope. So if we can do that, then he can take it. I think the chief was concerned about, I should have asked the chief when he was here too, because he made a comment that the chief was concerned about Granby Country Grain and Granby Housing. I don't understand why his concern was about it when the pipe's going up that far. So I was a little confused on what the concern of it was.
I think it was the grain store was the amount of pressure
Yeah, the
Okay.
that would be available if we're relying
Okay.
on hydrant system up there.
Okay,
Because if it's not enough PSI, then they would have an issue trying to put out a fire at the grain store
okay.
or at the elderly complex.
And that's because it's only 40 pounds, he was saying, right, of pressure
Well,
or PSI.
what is it? What is that? 280? Yeah, they only have about a little less than 50 pounds of pressure.
Okay. And typically they want at least 58, he said, right?
Yeah.
Which is around the 260.
Yeah.
All right. So I think, Chris, if that could be our phase one, I guess, but we got to tie in somewhere, right? And the water's coming from Pleasant Street, so we would have to go all the way
Well,
down Pleasant
You
Street
can lay the pipe.
and
You
just
can
not
charge
tie
it
in yet.
later.
Okay,
I think when he was talking about it, get the pipe in the ground.
yep,
That way they pave after the pipe is in the ground. All we have to do then is connect it to phase 2 or phase 3 or whatever phase we're in. And charge it that way. Most people think we have to build from their connection at the end of Pleasant Street coming down. And then but we can go backwards.
so,
Which is what I said.
so we would lay the pipe from Pizza Palace all the way through 202. That would be phase one.
And maybe see if you can get it out by CVS there
Okay,
and up past.
Duncan,
Maybe up to the condos,
okay.
because how far back are they going up there? I think they went a little bit past CVS, didn't they? In this round?
Yeah, it looks like almost a Pleasant Brook feed, but like halfway to it.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think that would probably be what we want the engineer to look at, because the moratorium is going to be on 202.
Yes.
Can they put a moratorium on our state road? On our town roads? Because Pleasant Street's a town road, but they paved it.
Whatever they pay.
Okay,
we have-
so then we would have to do the CVS and the Pleasant Street that they are paving.
Yes.
So for, right up to here is the moratorium. So we'd only be able to go to Pizza Palace right here, up 202 to Granby Housing Authority. And then past 600 feet to in that intersection to CBS. And then at least to the Crescent Valley condominiums. So that would have to be our phase one if we don't want to have a 5-year moratorium on us.
That's a lot. Sure.
It is a lot.
Especially if the state comes in and decides they're gonna pave.
That's why I'm curious what that yeah, that's why I'm curious if I'll look at the DOT number tonight if I can see it. Well, it's getting dark already, but
Where is that?
it's right on the telephone pole, I think in front of Dunkin' Donuts. There's a telephone pole right there on the corner. And it had a Mass DOT number on it. Because usually online they have like a time frame, but that is a lot.
Yeah, especially if they decide they're gonna pave, like I said.
Mhm.
It's definitely not gonna happen in that time frame.
Right. Because we would have to go 4,086 feet for the 202, 60 feet for the CVS. And then I don't know, or 600 feet, sorry, for the CVS. And I don't know how much the other one would be because it just gives a total for that road. But we take it to Crescent Valley.
If that little stretch is 3,000.
Yeah.
It's about a third.
That'd be 5.
56 to 5,800 feet.
Does that sound right, Chris?
Hmm.
Does that sound right with the, for phase 1? I mean, we can ask the engineer if that's even something, that's a lot of feet to cover in phase 1. But we at least need it down 202 because of the moratorium that will be put on it if we're able to, depending on the timing of the pavement going down. And then CVS is 600 feet. So all of 202, it says is 4,086 feet. And then you got 600 feet for the CVS stretch on Pleasant Street. And then we're estimating about 1,000 to the condominiums. So roughly 5,800 feet is what phase 1 would be, which is a lot. But that would cover that
Well-
intersection. And then you were saying, does the engineer need to be involved for all of that? Right, because Hadley District 2, well, we would subcontract this out to a company, right?
We have to go out to bid.
Right. And so then it would be whoever took the bid or the lowest bidder, I guess. And the engineer would be needed for the bridge. Where was the bridge that they were talking about? Is that, okay, right, where the, where DOT is working and they have all their conservation tubes along for the water?
Right here. You know,
Oh, yes, yes,
Right there.
okay, yes.
right here.
Okay.
But
And we can't touch here, so the
Correct.
engineer doesn't need to be involved necessarily.
Correct.
Oh, because that's the only thing we needed the engineer for.
Yes, maybe.
Okay.
And then we had asked them if we could have put the line down the sidewalk instead of
Yep,
the road.
I remember you saying that.
And he said, no, we couldn't do it because of the amount of ledge and obstructions that are in the way. Because that would have been the easy way. We could have proceeded with the project and not worry about the moratorium.
Right. But now they have the sidewalks going, well, not here, yeah.
Yeah, but it's easier paving a 3-foot wide sidewalk than a 24-foot wide road.
Right. Okay. So then, do we need to contact the engineer? We just need to get an estimate on the phase 1.
Right.
Maybe it's just like you have emails for the water contract. No, they did. I think the last phase was 2018, right? When you guys looked at the putting water down to 2019. So I was not on the board yet, but they had, Kathy had sent us this and, I can have her send it to you, but phase one, and it doesn't say the street. And it's very slow. West State Street. Phase one was taking it down here. Phase two was taking it down Pleasant Street and then to East Street. Oh, okay. So where east goes to Morgan, there's Morgan Street here. So that was District 1. So you're gonna tie into District 1, bring it down Pleasant Street, bring it to 202.
Okay, the question I have was the plan that the DOT number 124015.
124015.
I think I have the plans.
Could you send that to us? We can look and see if we have a time frame. Because I know it said when we first looked at it, it was going to be completed in 2026. But I think I don't think that's just 5 corners. I think that's school. Well, no, because School Street would have its own number.
Well, they have a location 1 and a location 2.
Okay. Of the same number, right?
I think it's the same number, yeah.
So it doesn't. I don't really. Then we can take a look at it more in depth and see what the time frame is. Or at least maybe have a conversation with the project manager and find out when they anticipate 5 corners to be done.
There you go.
Thank you. Now, the MWRA project that you were looking into, that was different, right? You were looking into
We were
tapping
looking
into
at, because there
Quabbin.
was a article put out that they want to increase the amount of water sale from Quabbin.
Mhm.
And we're gonna look at seeing if we could apply to be able to get water from there.
Now, South Hadley, that's where they get their water, right? From Quabbin?
District 2 gets it from Quabbin, Chicopee gets it from Quabbin, and there's one other town.
Where does District 1 get their water?
Lithia Springs, I believe.
Oh, really? I did not know that.
I believe they are Lithia Springs.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
And what's the South Hadley reservoir? Right here on 202. Or next to the water.
Maybe it's the second one for them, I don't know.
Maybe it's just a
Yeah.
holdover.
Now, is there someone that you contact to see if we can be one of
We
the
just
towns?
need to get a hold of the office and see if we can qualify and try and get a figure. I wonder. I got a name of somebody at Mass DOT.
Jessica got that.
But no number there, huh?
Well, these are all from Chief O'Grady, so.
Oh, okay.
mm. Let me just keep looking.
It might have it on the Mass DOT that you sent us. Might be in one of the small sections and small writing.
Like I think it's project number 124 number.
Okay.
Because when I do police detail billing, that's the number I have to put on the bill.
Okay.
So that may be the project number 4.
Okay. And did you already reach out to the office for the MWRA, or we still have to?
No, I still have to.
Okay. And then the dredging, as I said last time, that's still on hold because we're still waiting for funds to be available. I know our representatives, Dan Carey and Mindy Dobb, are looking into seeing what type of funding we can get, but we missed the round of freshwater dredging. It closed in I think it was in January. The only one I found when I looked in the fall was saltwater dredging, but there was one that came out in January and I missed it. I didn't see it.
And I was looking at another one. Well, infrastructure, but I think they really want to put that more towards the cranberry bogs and these two are state.
I did read that, yes. I think that's,
There was one in there, I can't remember the name of it, but I was reading about it and they said they're looking mainly to do that down in the eastern part. It looked like something that we could possibly have done for. But it's a waterway. I was looking at it, it's a waterway.
We'll just have to keep looking and keep our eyes open. Maybe they'll offer it again in January, January or timeframe. And then the goals for fiscal year 2025. So we should share this with Glenn. If this is your only. Okay, I was gonna say I can give it to Chris and he can email it to everyone. And that should be because we'll table that until Glenn's here for discussion. Okay. So do you want to send us the goals that you came up with or send it to Chris and then he can send it out to us for our next meeting? Is there any of them that you want to just state tonight or discussion next time too, because it is getting long. It's totally up to you.
well, a lot of it is just, things that I've discussed when I was thinking about what we can do to help our needs in town as far as website needs, updating the website. Of course, the minutes, everybody wants those, right?
Yeah.
We know that already. One thing, like a how-to area for anyone looking to pay a bill or build a house or get a permit or process for a pool or business or anything like that. So they could just maybe read a list on the website and say, okay, I need to check these items off.
Yeah.
Before trying to sit in front of a bunch of boards with no information or not knowing what they need to put forward. Then they could, if there was a checklist they could go by. Obviously, we want it to be a place where people can educate themselves. Update forms and try to streamline them so we can just do everything on the line. As Dan Cody is trying to do, but as he said, he's got a lot to catch up on.
Yeah.
Possibly have links from the town website that connect to other areas like the school, police, fire departments. Spoken about volunteers, I had that on the list for park improvements and what we can do for that. Do we ever offer the parks to other towns for rental? Like, like we could leave here and go to, Brook Park in Northampton if you wanted to rent space there. Has there ever been an option for that to let people come into town, like say from South Hadley?
Yeah, they're not, they just put an application in, it's a different fee. They don't get the resident fee, they get a non-resident fee.
Okay, that was one of the things I was thinking.
That might be a how-to,
How to,
like
right,
if you put it down on how do you rent the pavilion or the gazebo or
Yep.
or the kitchen or the bathrooms.
I think that's out there under the Dufrank Park.
Is it?
What page?
Okay,
On the
maybe I
website.
just didn't find it.
I don't think it has the application, it has the fee schedule, it
Okay,
has
I probably just didn't.
all the stuff you need to fill out.
But you have to go to Dufresne Park,
All right,
Yes.
maybe that's one.
so it's under the department.
And then the rest of what I put together was just, other fees and other parks, if we consider raising fees to try and bring a little more revenue in the town, not for residents, but for non-residents.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, so send that list to Kathy and Chris, and then we can discuss it with Glenn at our next meeting. So I know our next meeting was scheduled for July 29th because I am on vacation the third week of July, and we had decided as a board that next week is too close, so to spread it out a little bit, because it's usually the first and the third. So, looking ahead at August, our meetings are usually the first and the third. So I just want to make sure that we are, that everyone can do it depending on vacations and so forth. So our August meetings would be the 5th and the 19th, if we go by schedule. We would have it on the
To the
20th.
5th and the 19th.
Yeah, because but we would have it double, right? Because July 29th and then August 5th.
Okay.
And then August 2nd, Chris, for September is Labor Day. So do we want to go to that Tuesday, the 3rd?
Hold on.
Nope.
I'm trying to get August in.
Okay, yeah, you go
Give
ahead.
me a second.
And actually, as I said, that September 3rd is the gravel pit dedicated to that. So never mind, scratch that.
That was a separate one by itself.
Yep.
right? But we're looking at the 9th and the 23rd, because there's 5 Mondays in September. Not right?
Yes, because we already had a meeting for the 3rd.
Right, the 3rd was for the gravel permit.
Yep.
And then we're gonna do the 9th and the 23rd as our regular meetings.
And the 23rd. Last year, in September, it's popping up that we did budget meetings. But we'll talk that later after we get through August, right?
Budgets were done,
I think we started discussions in September, right? Or we would, no?
because budgets usually are due, I think it means done November.
Okay.
You may have done November, December.
I don't know why it popped up like that. It was weird. Right, so those dates are good for you. So August 5th and 19th. And then we'll go, September 3rd is its own meeting. And then we have September 9th and 23rd. All right. Do you have anything else you want to discuss next time? Besides what's on the agenda so far? So on the 29th, we'll make our executive session at 5:30 with a regular meeting at 6:30. And an appointment with the IBP,
IBP,
thank you, IUP.
International Brotherhood of Police Officers, local number 321.
All right. So I will entertain a motion to end the meeting.
I will make a motion to adjourn the meeting
I will second that motion. Any further discussion?
discussion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.